500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die."
The Phantom,
The ghost who walks,
the Phantom,
enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom.
G'day everyone, and for those who came in late, you're listening to Expand, the Phantom podcast. This is episode 135, Comics and News, and my name is Dan Fraser, and today I'm joined by Jermaine Parker. How are you, Jerm?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Yourself?
You're a year older since last time I spoke to you.
Yes. Yeah, celebrated a birthday in between our last podcast, which was, nice in the sense that, another year, more grey hairs or go bald or however way you show your age.
Oh, you're one step closer to being a Falkist.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. It's one step closer to being a grumpy old Falkist.
Yeah. We'll have to work out what exactly is the correct age where you cross the line. I think it's different times for different people, but you must be getting close.
Yeah, that's it. And also the other key is when I start pressing Control Plus on the run sheet so I can actually see what we're talking about.
Fair enough. Right. So episode 135, it's actually been a few podcasts since we've spoken together, because there's been the podcast from Norway, and there's been the recordings of the Brisbane Supernova, and prior to that there was the interview with Billy Zane, of course, and I'll come to that in a moment, but we didn't really talk on that podcast. Prior to that there was Adelaide. Yeah, so just keen to catch up, and obviously I think for both of us, surely the highlight of the last month or two is that conversation with Billy Zane.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was in the when I got the phone call, I was in the creche at church looking after Poppy. So quickly sped home. As soon as church finished, I said, "All right, we're going straight away." Abby was like, "But I want some food." I said, "No, we're going home." Rang up the wife and said, "Quick, we've got to do a quick swap." So, she graciously gave me time and took the kids out to McDonald's or somewhere like that, and was able to have the house to myself to be able to talk to Billy, and and so I didn't have to have the noisy kids around, unlike other
poor old Steve. I think he's not here with us tonight. I think we caught him at the showgrounds, and it was so bloody hard, and you could hear his kids from time to time through the podcast, but it didn't detract from the overall conversation, I didn't think.
No. So, for me and Stephen, it was a small taste, I guess, of what a lot of other fans got to do. Yourself, you're lucky to actually share a room with just, Billy and yourself and stuff like that. We won't ask what happened before and after the podcast. But no, so I guess a lot of people who didn't go, or even the people that did go, they got maybe 20 seconds with him while he was scribbling on some of their items. So for yourself, who actually probably got to spend more time with him than the average fan, I've got a couple of questions for you as we just reflect on this. So how did you find he was with, like, the fans? Like, obviously, people give him 4 or 5 things at once and he's scribbling away and stuff, and so there's maybe 20 seconds to a minute. Was he chatty with people, or how was he with the fans?
Yeah, he was quite chatty with people, far more than what I'd been led to expect, I guess, from everything we'd heard about him, from guys in America through to Sean, who recorded for us at Adelaide. What he sort of said about the conveyor belt, or the factory line that you were on to get the signatures. It didn't feel like that. He seemed more generous with his time. It felt like a couple of minutes. there was opportunity for a genuine conversation. I saw him do that with multiple people just throughout the weekend. He was quite good. The photos were very quick, but the signing of stuff was quite good.
I guess, we've been, and Sean did point this out in his brief little podcast, which, huge shout out to Sean for that.
Yeah.
He is there to make money. He's there to charge and stuff like that. So, we've been used to, I guess, standing by someone and hanging around and talking to them for an hour and monopolising their time and stuff. So it would have been a little bit different than what we're used to.
Yeah, and I could stand to be corrected on this, but my understanding of the financial arrangement is that Billy Zane gets a flat fee, whatever that might be, and so then for the 6 days across the 2 supernovas, he's basically Supernova's property, and they say, right, you need to be here signing autographs, and you need to get as many done as you can, and so in a sense, to him, it's not like every signature is getting him money. He's already got his money, and I think that's where we probably worked it well, so that we ended up talking to him sort of straight after lunch on Sunday. I caught him at his second last signing session, and towards the end of that, and so by that stage, I think he was a little bit, well, I've given Supernova my time. He might have felt like he'd already earned his fee, so to speak. So that was it. Certainly felt at the time like the Supernova folk weren't really happy with the time that he gave us. And they would have, because he was delayed to a signature session, but
probably be a few fans that wouldn't have been happy either. Where is this guy?
Maybe not, but I rationalised to myself that if you haven't got his signature by his last session on the Sunday, then it's your own fault. So anyway, I think that and he genuinely was keen for us to keep talking and give us the time. So super generous with us and with all the fans. It was my experience with him anyway.
Now, a lot of when I was talking to him, on the podcast, and it was just a voice over the phone, but he seemed genuine about his love of the fandom. When because you would have been there for a lot of the time when he was talking to other fans and stuff like that. Could you sense that love when he was talking to other people?
Yeah, I did, and I think it certainly when he was talking, and that's what I picked up, probably more from the reports of other people, because I wasn't standing by their shoulder when he talked to them, but lots of people that I talked to who had talked to him were pleased with the time that he gave them and all the rest of it. There was an occasion, that I'm aware of someone who didn't have a pleasant, interaction with him. But that was, I guess, when he was off the clock. If you like, if you say, as I said, with the 3 days of contracting to Supernova, I know of someone who spoke to him when he was around about knock-off time, if you like. Yeah. And that wasn't a super pleasant conversation. But anyone who spoke to him while he was on the clock, as far as I know, had a really good
Yeah. Cool. No, so it was pretty cool. And the petition's doing pretty well as well. I think last time I saw it, it was about 800 odd, was it?
Yeah, it's a tick over 800 at the moment, which is going along well. I know that there is people who are, poo-pooing the idea about, how many might it actually take. I've got no idea, but it's something we're doing, and it's at 800 at the moment. I'm sure, Frew have advertised it in the latest issue of the regular Phantom comic in Australia, which is awesome. It's getting a lot of traction online. Statistically, it's got a lot more shares per signature than most change.org petitions. So I think it's going well. Yeah, it's a slow burn, but we've been waiting 20 years, and who knows where it'll go? Who knows?
And I think that's the key. Like, we might have to get to 1 million, but it has to start somewhere. It may get to 1 million, it may not. This may just fizzle out and it stays at 850 for the next 4 years or whatever. But instead of poo-pooing the idea, how about you just get on board, just share it, and just grow up. I'm getting a little bit over some of the trolls that we're having to deal with on Facebook at the moment. Maybe it's just that I am that year older and I'm getting grouchy, but just get on board. And if you don't want to sign it, don't worry about it. Don't say anything. As your mum always said to you, if you've got nothing nice to say, Don't say anything at all. So come on, mate. Come on, guys.
Well, I might have to say the same thing to you as I said to Paul Mason at the end of the Brisbane Supernova. Sometimes you've just got to ignore those voices and concentrate on the good ones. And there's a lot fewer trolls than there are people who compliment it or share it, obviously. So, yeah. What did Paul say? Chronicle Chamber is good for the soul. So let's just focus on what we do.
Yeah, we won't give them too much airtime. So we'll move on with some of the other news. All right.
Anyway, the link to the petition is in the show notes for this. So go down and sign the petition to say you want a new Phantom movie if you haven't already.
Yeah,
but we do need to move on.
And we're looking at you, Andreas and Mikael Sol, to get the mention in the Fantomen magazine. Frew's done it. And it's been shared quite elsewhere. We're looking at Fantomen magazine to share it in their next issue as well.
I'm sure they will. Because they're only going to benefit from a new movie as well. So anyway, other publisher news. So that's some publisher news we'd love to see is Fantomen sharing the link to the petition. Other news that is actually current and we know is happening. We'll start with Frew in Australia because this is actually really big news in the world of Phantom. From anyone ever. So we've got to go with it. And that's obviously the Frew getting on board with the digital release of their comics through the comiXology app and website. Really exciting news. When we reported it, I'm going to say a month ago, 3 weeks ago, there was, I think, the 2 trade paperbacks and a Giantsize, perhaps, were the first 3 things released. Since then, a whole lot more has come on board. Giantsize 1 and 2 are now both on their trade paperback. One, which was, of course, for those who came in late, and the second one was the 70th anniversary of Frew. So both of those trade paperbacks are there. The Sword of the Caliph graphic novel, the Kid Phantom trade paperback, as well as the individual episodes of or issues of Kid Phantom 1 through 4, are all available right now on comiXology. Most at about half the price of a regular hardcover. And the word we've got is that the regular issues that we see once a fortnight, those will be coming onto comiXology as well at some point. So this is really exciting news, Jim.
Yeah, we can confirm that the regular issues will be coming. So no, it is very exciting news. Now, Egmont tried to do digital comics probably 5-7 years ago, maybe, but that wasn't via comiXology. That was actually via their own app, and it flopped. Where comiXology is like the big daddy, and there's a lot of hoops that have to be gone through to be able to get it on there from comiXology point of view, but also from the license point of view as well. Because you've got to remember, the license is everything, and Frew only have a license for Australia, Asia, or Australia, Oceania. So to be able to, in a sense, sell worldwide through comiXology, they would have had to renegotiate it. We don't know the ins and outs of that. No. That's between lawyers and stuff like that. We're not privy to that, but we know enough to know that this was not something that's just chucking a PDF up there and just there would have been a lot of hoops that would have had to go on through that. So it's big news. It could be a game changer. Now, for a lot of the people that probably listen to this, or a lot of the Australian readers, it doesn't mean a thing for a lot of people. But for the people that are in India, the US, and we have a lot of fans on social media and also that listen to the podcast who always are saying to us, when can we buy it? How can we access this Frew issue? How can we access this? How can, shipping's too expensive and all that. This is the way to be able to access it. So it's a game changer in the sense that Frew are going to be able to reach they're probably going to be able to double their readership with regular Phantom fans, let alone the new people that are likely to jump on board with this as well. So, this is big news. This is a huge step in the right direction from Frew, and Frew should be congratulated for this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I do hope that what happens is that people enjoy the digital copies and then seek out the hard copies as well, because obviously,
Now that
greater
will
profit
happen,
and
but for a
sustainability
lot
in
of a lot of people like in the States and in India and stuff like that, that's probably not going to happen because shipping, and you know this because you've started shipping stuff out to people around the world and all that.
Yeah.
It can be quite expensive. Like say for instance, you can buy a $20 comic and it costs $20 to actually send it over. So where you can get a comic for a $20 comic for $10 or $12, and it's actually on your phone or on your device and stuff like that. And a lot of people do use digital comics and stuff like that. So yeah,
I'd be interested to know that, because I suspect, and talking to people who are not just fandom people, I actually don't think that the uptake of digital comics is perhaps as huge as we might expect. But the important thing is it is a market, no matter how big it is. And not just Frew, but the Phantom needs to be playing in that market. And getting in front of more eyeballs, and whatever spread that you can get. And if it doubles Frew's readership, then that's fantastic. And I would hope surely that even with licensing and whatever subscription it is to comiXology for them, which would be substantial, I hope it's a significant increase in their profit margin. That for not a great deal extra work, I would hope, because you're doing the hard work creating the comic and then just sending whatever digital files to comiXology. So it's hopefully in the long run, and I know it's been a huge amount of effort to get to this point, but hopefully in the long run for them, it's not very much more effort at all for a considerable reward.
Yeah. So you raise an interesting point about the market for digital. So in North America alone, so this is just US and Canada, right? For every year since 2013, there's been $90,000 to $1 million worth of sales digitally. That's just in North America. So that's not including...
Which, to be fair, is going to be a huge chunk of the market.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just, because that's the only stat we've got. That's the only stat we were able to dig out during the article. So let's just say it might be a little bit more. So let's say on average, for the last 6 years, there's been $1 million worth of sales in digital comics. Now, that's $1 million reasons why to jump on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Except, obviously Frew's not getting all of that. I'm absolutely not trying to be the negative Nelly, but I'm just trying to be realistic here and say that whatever percentage of $1 million American, to be honest, that honestly doesn't sound like as much as I would have probably expected. Because comics and pop culture and that sort of thing is huge at the moment. And and all of the kids are supposed to be digital natives. So
is it 100 million or 90 million? I don't know. It's one of those. I can't think of.
Oh, you wrote the article.
I've been up since I've been up since like 4 o'clock. So, but it's a lot of money, and you're right. And like what the point that you made, it's not that much extra effort because the comic's already digital.
That's the main thing. Yeah.
And if they let's be realistic and just say it's an extra. Whatever, and I'm sure Frew's done their research, their margins and stuff like that. And they wouldn't be doing this if they wouldn't think that one is going to extend their reach and they're going to make money from it. They wouldn't be doing this. So no, I think it's a great decision. I know that they've been working on this for a while. So all power to them. So it's good. It's good.
Yeah. I agree. I'm just saying it's not a silver bullet, but it's another
way.
It's another weapon in the armory, if you like.
Yeah, exactly. So it's 90 to 100 million each year. So
so that's more significant than
that's more significant.
All right. Anyway, whatever the numbers, we're not going to get bogged down in that because we need to move on. There's a lot to cover tonight with all of the comics and that sort of thing as well. As we said, we haven't spoken for a while, so look, to draw a line under that one. Fantomet comments and comics. You've done a bit of investigating, spoken to some people in Norway. We heard recently, last podcast, about some regions, but But one of the books that they were talking about, which was obviously the first trade paperback, Jerm, you're saying that overall the sales from that have been underwhelming.
Yeah, it's a little bit sad, but I guess it's not. It's not a huge surprise. I you know, from what we understand, they're still doing it for 2020, and they're just looking at what's the best formula to do that. So I don't think it's that unimpressive that they're going to cancel the series, which is good. But I think they just thought that that the softcover book was going to be the silver bullet for their woes, but I don't think it is. So let's just wait and see and what decision they come up with to increase the sales, and so it'll be interesting to watch the space for that one.
Yeah. All right. So a devil's advocate question. I'm an Australian fan who enjoys reading English language comics. As it would seem, a poll that you've done says that probably 80% of the people who, 75 to 80% of people who engage with us on social media would say that they only collect comics in their native language. So I'm an Australian fan who only reads English comics. Why do I care that Fantomet softcover sales are low?
Well, I guess it really depends if you... it's a good devil's advocate question. I guess it really depends whether you want to look at the larger picture or whether you're just worried about your own backyard. At the end of the day, the Fantomet probably won't affect the average Frew reader, or probably even affect the average Swedish Fantomen reader. But at the end of the day, if the sales stay crap and the book gets cancelled for good, it's just another nail in the coffin. And there's enough nails in the coffin already. And we need to, and I'm not saying that we all need to go out and buy a copy. That's, because that's not, I don't think that's the answer. It will help. But I think one of the reasons why we reported on it is because we might be Australians, but we report worldwide on the Phantom. So, for the average Frew reader, it probably doesn't bother them in any slice, and that's fine. You don't have to read the article, you don't have to comment. But seeing we report Australia worldwide, we collect news from around the world and we report on it. This is a big deal for a lot of fans in Norway. They might have, I think it's 10 million people in Norway. I think it's less than Australia. I can't remember at the top of my head. I think Sweden's just under what Australia is. It might not be a huge population, but there's a rich history in Norway with the Phantom. And so, for someone who collects the Phantom from around the world and someone who cares about the Phantom from a worldwide perspective, I think it's important to be aware of it.
Good response. All right. On that note, we'll move straight on because I'm not going to ask another devil's advocate question. We'll leave it at that. The Lucca prints, which I think we've spoken about on the podcast before, but the prints that Sal Velluto and Eugenio Mattozzi made available in Italy from the Lucca Comics and Games Convention. As listeners and readers of the website certainly would know, we were lucky enough to be able to help people in Australia get those and by importing in bulk and then selling at cost to patrons in the first instance, and then the broader community. Those have sold out as recently as today, Jim.
Yeah, sold the last one today. So back to the PO box. Back to the post office again for me this week. It's exciting. A lot of fans have been excited about that. I guess there's a lot of artists out there that know there's a huge community with the Phantom and stuff, and they don't always have the means to be able to bring it in or to be able to sell to 20 individual Phantom fans in Australia. So we were able to help Sal and Eugenio, and I guess if you're a Phantom artist and you're doing something similar and you want to help out, just get in contact with us. I'm sure we can help out in whatever small way we can.
Yeah, very good, very good. And there are some beautiful prints. So I hope that
Yes.
the people who have acquired them enjoy them. So
Yes.
that said, I did skip over because I was typing in a different window, but I have skipped over a piece of publisher news, and that's lightning strikes. I know there'll be people who will probably roll their eyes immediately, but we again, you have seen now there are some issues of lightning strikes 3 and 4 definitely in Australia in your hands now, Jermaine.
Yes, for those who are watching us via YouTube, you are seeing me. So we've got issue 1, which we've seen, which is the one with the Fantomen hero in the painted style. Issue 2, which is the Jamie Johnson, which we've seen that image 1,000 times. And then issue 3 is the Doug Kaluba redrawn one, which has got the short stories. So there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's about 6 or 7 short stories in there by people that we are aware of. So there's Mike Bullock, who did Moonstone, who has agreed with us as early as today. This is so fresh, I haven't even had a chance to tell Dan. He's just come back to me and said that he's happy to do a podcast with us early next year. Andreas,
who was that? Sorry,
Erickson,
was that Mike Collins?
Mike Bullock, who was the writer for Moonstone. So these are some names that have contributed to this comic here. And then this is issue 4, which the eagle-eyed YouTube viewers will notice that he's in a red costume, which is something a little bit funny, a little bit interesting, which is the Alex Suviak sequel to part 1.
2 to issue 1.
Yes. So we are aware that there's been 2 other orders that have been received. They're not up on Fantomen's Vault or Frew, same thing but different banner yet. So when we are aware that they are on there, we'll be letting everyone know, which I'm sure everyone else will be getting excited as well. Now, we're not going to be doing a podcast review on the 4 of these until they're on Fantomen's Vault or Frew, just purely because we want to be able to give the chance for other people to be able to read them first. So as soon as they're up there...
I haven't seen them yet. So just because you've got them in your hands doesn't mean I could hold up my end of a podcast.
It might mean that it might be a little bit quicker if you don't get as much to say.
Yeah, quite possibly.
But I don't think there's much more to say about that. We'll talk about it in more detail when they become available to the wider Phantom Australian community. But we just wanted to let people know that they do exist and orders have been sent through.
Very good. All right. Now, something we haven't actually had a chance to, we've written about on the podcast, on the website. We've written about on the website, but we're not keeping up with all the updates. And this is why social media is so important these days, because you can keep your finger directly on the pulse. But Wulfric Media, who have been in and about with the fandom community for a couple of years now, without actually producing anything, to be fair. But they're certainly making some strong moves, and all the action is on their Facebook page. Wulfric Media, WULFRIC, for those who want to look it up. They have got some skull rings and some good mark rings, as well as some Jungle Patrol merchandise that's starting to look more and more promising, June.
Yeah. Now, quick question. You've talked with him a little bit more than what I have. Has anything actually been, I know there's been like pre-orders or whatever, but has anything actually been, approved by King Features?
The molds of the rings, which appeared on Facebook either yesterday or the day before, certainly earlier this week. So we saw pictures of, I guess, an unfinished mold, like a casting straight out of the mold, obviously with some bumps and edges to be polished up and cleaned up and that sort of stuff. So those are being sent to King Features this week, and those are the items that are going to be considered for approval. That's my understanding of the situation. Yeah. So how long that takes, I'm not sure. To my untrained eye, looking at the pieces myself, I can't see why they wouldn't be approved. They're quite similar to other things that we have seen
Yeah.
approved in the past.
There's been worse stuff that's been approved.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So they are unique. I'm not saying that they're the same as something else that's already out there, but there's nothing that would, to me, stand out. It should be a pretty straightforward approval process, I would think, without being in the King Features offices. And one day we'll get someone from King Features on here to explain themselves. But until that time, so I'm hopeful that they'll be sooner rather than later. And Kelby, who's the man behind Wulfric Media, is increasingly confident, and that's why he's now started talking about hats and beanies and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. Now, have you ordered a set of rings?
I haven't, I must admit, no.
And what about the miniatures? Have you ordered a set of the miniatures?
I've told Kelby, well, look, I've informally told Kelby that I'm interested in everything, but no, I haven't placed an official order.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
I'm in the same boat, and I wonder whether there's a lot of other fans in a very similar boat where they're like, oh yeah, these look really, really cool. You know, I'm interested, but I guess until there's, you know, liking a Facebook page is one thing, but then actually giving your money, all your credit card details, that will be the deciding. And so I haven't, I've looked at it. I'll probably get the miniatures. I like the idea of the miniatures. I probably won't get the rings, mainly because the rings don't interest me, and I'm sorry to the people out there that do, but for me they don't interest me. But the miniatures I'll definitely be getting, but yeah, rings I'll probably won't be, especially not at that price.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. I do like the Jungle Patrol merch that's coming out. I like because the dog tags are not something we've seen before, and it sort of it marries up nicely, I guess, with what's going on in with Paul Mason's Fantomen in Vietnam series. Sort of nice that they're coming out together at a similar time. So anyway, I like those. They're again on the pricey side of what I like to pay, because it's it's hard to turn around to the wife and say that they were $20 and sound believable. I think if there was suddenly a post that appeared tomorrow to say these have been approved by King Features and we are now confirmed that we will produce this if we get to our magic number, which I think is 70, which doesn't, that's not a huge number. No. I think if that post came out tomorrow, there'd be a lot of people jump on board pretty quickly.
Yeah,
so,
I think
as with anything, you've got to wait for the approvals.
Yeah. The only concern I have with the Jungle Patrol merch, and this is being probably a devil's advocate, is that it's not really Phantom in the sense that, I know it is, but it's like, it's really only going to be probably the hardcore fans that are going to buy it, because it's not a Phantom's face or it's like, for instance, you wouldn't be able to sell it in a shop because someone who's looking at buying something for their dad or whatever is going to look at it and go, Jungle Patrol, no. But if it was a Phantom's face, they're going, oh yeah, the Phantom, I know that. So there's that longer bow, or there's that longer stretch of relation to the Phantom. So I'm a little bit concerned how that's going to go, and I think it will be more hardcore fans.
To be fair, though, how many Phantom merch items that are produced in the last 10 years have appeared in a shop?
Yeah, okay. So
the
it
Phantom,
was more but okay, it might not be in a physical shop, but looking online and stuff like that.
I'm more bullish about them. I think that just because they haven't been offered before won't mean they won't sell. And I actually, to me, I love the Good Mark. I enjoy Good Mark merch. The candle that came from whoever that was, the hero thing a couple of years ago, I've got that turned around so the Good Mark's facing out. I like the Good Mark tie pin. Good Mark's a really nice Phantom thing for me, and it's on the Jungle Patrol dog tags and any of that merch. So for me, I'm keen on it. And you don't go for rings. Other people don't go for foreign language comics. I enjoy
So,
good
yeah.
ones. So.
Yeah, and but yeah, that's fine. I guess we'll just see.
Yeah,
Cool.
fair enough. All right. Well, that said, I think we now need to move into the comic section of the podcast because that's all the news that we've got for. Hang on. I'll just start. Sorry, Jem. I'll just get the phone. Hello. Who's this?
Hello, it's Mikael. Good day, mates.
G'day.
G'day, Mikael. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Are you doing
Good,
a
you've got-
news podcast?
Yes,
we
you've
are,
got
mate.
impeccable timing.
Amazing.
We were just starting to talk about the Phantom card game that you've had in mind for a long time. Can you? We're very
What a
excited to hear you
coincidence.
might have some news about it.
Yeah, sure. I have some good news. It's still ongoing. I've been working on it for quite a time, as you know, and I got some great news from the license holder, I'm not sure what it's called, but the Swedish Bulls distributor of the rights. Yeah, that I have a clear okay, and I have a contract that's gonna be signed. So now it's just starting to plan the big Kickstarter.
Oh,
wow.
awesome. So you're going to do a Kickstarter, eh?
Yeah, and before that, I mean, it's still a game in progress, and I'm changing a small bits here and there just to make it as easy to learn as possible. And I want it to be both easy for new players and hard for veterans. So I'm trying to do like 3 different difficulty settings.
Yeah, awesome.
And
so
we-
that's for
we
like
would-
Phantom fans and then professional card gamers.
Yes, so there will be a level for everyone.
Sweet. Sorry, Dan.
No, that's right. We're going to do a deep dive into the card game when the Kickstarter starts or just beforehand.
Yes.
So this is really just a teaser little conversation. Really looking forward to that. But just quickly, you've got an experience in card games yourself, Mikael, as well as being obviously we know that you're a huge fan, and listeners will know that. But you've got a history with playing these card games as well.
Yeah, I've been playing card games for, I don't know, since Magic the Gathering came out. I've been playing that, and then left it for some times like when you started meeting girls, and then picked it up when I got kids again.
When you needed that time alone.
Yeah. So, I mean, I played that game and played Netrunner and a Swedish, it was originally from Sweden, but it was big in all of Europe, called Doom Trooper. So I'm an avid card gamer.
And what made you, and as I said, we're going to explore all these answers in way more detail next time we talk to you, but what made you decide that you wanted to make a Phantom card game?
Yeah, I mean, I love Phantom, and I think I mentioned it in the interview you did last time. Like, I played one of the old Swedish games, and I felt like it was a bit outdated. I was thinking about, if I got the chance to make a Phantom card game, how would I do it? And I started writing it, and I couldn't stop doing it. So I've been trying to do it better and better ever since, and that's like 3 years ago. So I've been working a bit on it. And I mean, if I want to play a Phantom game, I want to be the Phantom or another hero. So like you can play like Phantom or Diana, and I also want it to be narrative driven. Like there's a lot of good stories and action in the Phantom comics. So why not just pick something out of there and experience it?
So I guess there's 2 questions to come out of that. One, if you were to compare it to another card game that you've played, is it like another? Are gamers going to be able to say, oh, this is a bit like that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit like the Lord of the Rings, the living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. That is also like narrative driven cooperative game and card game, and it's also they have a new game with the Marvel heroes. I'm not sure what it's called, but I haven't played it. But when I read through their press material, it also sounded a bit like this, and also the legendary encounters. All of these, like they have stories, but they are cooperative games. So you play together, and either you win, everyone wins, or everyone loses.
Okay.
Cool.
And
And is there a Phantom storyline that your game is based around?
yeah, there are three actually. So there's three stories. I have some of the old prototypes here. Like first, there is the story about the Story of Devil. That's won many times of the best story in Sweden. So I thought that would be a good one to start with, and it's also good. Then you can unlock Devil and have him in your deck after you're done.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then,
Just one thing. If you're listening to the audio podcast of this, Mikael is just showing us some prototypes, some early versions of the game. So it will be worth shooting over to the YouTube as well, so you can have a look at that as well.
Yeah,
Sorry,
absolutely.
mate.
For sure.
Continue.
yeah, and then we have the Diana in the Jungle Patrol. It was hard to find an episode where Diana is she's always, or she should be portrayed as a strong character, but when she's like the main focus, this is a great story, and I chose that one. And then a love of mine has always been the Year One, or it's called the 21st Phantom, the actual episode. But I always love that one, and it's also good. Then we start out when it's new, and then since your deck in the beginning will also be like average, and then while going through the adventure you will unlock new cards and become better, and then you can take on higher difficulty. So I think that was my thinking when I chose these adventures.
And from a gameplay perspective, those three decks that you've just shown us are all interlinked and can be added to the bigger game. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's like two parts of everything. You have the player deck with like the Phantom and the cards he uses. We have like Bandar Medicine, Bandar Explorers. You have Ramos, a follower, and you have like the cult. So you have equipment and actions, like you can seek shelter and such, and that will be you will increase this deck through the adventures. So like while you're playing, you unlock new cards, and you can use those in the next adventures, or when you replay them on a difficult another difficult setting. While the other part is the actual adventure, like the Story of Devil, where you meet wolves and you meet Colonel Bagshot, that is the bad guy, and those are separate, so they will stay the same, except that you can change the difficulty. But this is, your own deck is what you build up, and you have this campaign of trying to expand your deck.
Cool. All right, and so again, so many questions to ask about this, and we're both from a collector's point of view. The artwork and the story. Have you got who have you got lined up for those?
Yeah, I mean, in this, all the cards in the game will be actual panels from the stories.
Yep.
So I will take them from the comic book and use them, so you will recognize them. Then, as I shown, this were the prototypes that are 3 different, but the goal now is to make it to one big box instead. And I haven't found the greatest an image to like take all over this, so I actually tried to get some original artwork for the actual box.
Nice.
So that would be great.
That would be nice.
Cool.
So, as we've said, there'll be more information coming out when the Kickstarter gets started and everything like that. Do we have a rough time frame of when we're hoping that Kickstarter will start? Like, are we talking about beginning of the year, around halfway through the year, towards the end of next year?
I mean, I don't really want to give a firm date, since of course, since I tried to give dates earlier, but everything takes much longer than I anticipate. But right now, I think the plan is at least in Q2 in 2020
Okay, sweet.
to start the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and we'll be able to have you on for a whole podcast dedication prior or around the beginning of the Kickstarter, I'm assuming.
That would be awesome.
Yep. And then that way,
Cool.
I'm assuming you'll be able to tell us a little bit more about it and stuff like that as well. That would be good. I loved all those two games as well. Story of Devil's one of the best ever. The Diana story has just been recently released in Australia from memory.
In the last 12 months or so, I reckon.
Yeah, what was that issue? Give me 2 seconds.
Oh.
It was issue 1804 in 2018. And then...
Right, so probably a bit more than 12 months, but...
Yeah, but we'll let you off for that one. And then, of course, you've got the Year One saga. What are your thoughts on the Year One saga, Mikael? You said that was one of your best stories that you liked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of a Team Fantomen person than most, I guess. And I think I love the election in Bengala, and I love the Year One, and I also love the 22nd Phantom saga we have now. I think they're great. And Year One,
Dan's dying in the background.
Well, it's been nice having you on the podcast, Mikael.
Yeah, I know. But I think it was pretty cool how they tried to weave in some of the Leaf Hawk stories and still create a new background from where he started. They tried to weave in I'm not sure what's it called in English, the story with the two rainbows. The belt.
Yeah, the belt.
Yeah,
the island of what's the island called again?
The island of Lyck.
Yeah.
How they wove that into it, and the earlier stories they have done with Johnny Hotwire. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you remember those stories, Dan?
Yeah, I do, and you know, as we suggested, I wouldn't ever list those against my my favourite stories, but I do remember them. So
that's
maybe
something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Maybe because they were so jarring to my understanding, they clashed or whatever. But they're also, you know, they're good stories, and I actually look forward to seeing them as a game rather than as a comic, because I think then the Story of Devil. I agree with you, Jim. That's I really do enjoy that story. I quite like it.
It fits with your focused concept well.
Yeah, it's been brought in, but that's because it's
Leaf Hawk introduced it into a newspaper story.
Yeah.
So it is,
and we've talked about that in an article on the podcast. An article on the website a ways back as well. But we need to. We probably need to hold that up there. Otherwise, this podcast will go for about 16 hours, like some of them have before. Mikael, thank you very much for bringing us that latest news. But we can't let you go because you are, I know you're a busy man, but you are a regular contributor to the podcast in the form of your comic reviews, which we've absolutely loved. And so if we can segue now from, end the news section of the podcast and come into the comics section of the podcast, we have to ask a little bit about you, mate. Thank you so much for what you've done and your contributions to the podcast over the last 12 months or so. How did you come to, for those who may have come in late, how did you come to be involved in sending us some reviews from Sweden for us?
Yeah, I think it was it's over a year ago. I think it was the Blood Rain issue.
Yeah. You gave us the video.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Andreas asked if someone asked me personally, maybe it was, if I wanted to do it with you guys. Could it be, or was it you?
It sounds about right. It was either Andreas or me. It was
because it was a special issue, Blood Rain, with the jam story with the 8 different artists.
Which we're going to be
really
reviewing.
were keen on seeing that, weren't we?
Yeah, and we're going to be reviewing that after we've talked to you as well.
Oh,
now that it's come in Australia. Now that it's come out in Australia. Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. so just backtracking a little bit, would have been 2018, I believe it was, when we got together and we said we really do need to branch out and review comics from around the world as well. And I believe what it was, I believe Andreas was involved, and I asked him for anyone who he would suggest, and I already knew you as well, Mikael. We did some dealings in the past and stuff as well, and he suggested you, I think it was, and so then that's how we got talking and how we got the video reviews, and they've been awesome. They've been really good. I've really enjoyed them, and we've been getting feedback from other people from around the world that have been enjoying them as well. So,
Thank you. I try to do my best.
No, you're very good and succinct. So and which the rest of us are not. Just to let the listeners know, maybe a little bit of general details. How old are you? Family situation. We've talked. You mentioned daughters before. Who are you, Mikael?
Yeah. So my name is Mikael. I live here in Sweden. Have done from all of my life, and I'm 38, married with 2 kids, a daughter called Leia, 9 years old, and a son called Lucas, 12 years old.
Are they from Star Wars?
Yeah, they were inspired by Star Wars. We read the bi-weekly comics as bedtime stories here in Stockholm.
Wow.
And I started reading the Phantom in my teens, so quite late teens actually, but it stuck. I think what stuck with me with Phantom is the continuity that coming from like Donald Duck and such, where everything goes back to status quo. This actually had some things that changed up, especially in Sweden though.
Yeah, especially in Sweden.
Like the Wagon not being president anymore.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Very good.
So what comics you got for us? Oh, sorry.
No,
got another question?
Don't get carried away, Jim. I was just going to ask, what sort of collector are you, Mikael? For you're into the comics, obviously. Do you also collect artwork and or figurines or cards, or what are you into? What's your poison?
That changes from month to month, right? But yeah, I want the comics, but I'm not a completionist. I just want to be able to have all of them, but it's okay to have the reprint books and such. And with the collectability, I like the cards, all the trading cards. As you know, I like card games, and I also like the cards. I love collecting the cards and stickers, but I also have some figurines and some rings and some other stuff that just gets included.
Yes.
So have you got the Frew trading cards?
Yes.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on those?
I think the artwork is great. It's too bad they didn't take like 1 or 2 extra day in the proofreading, but I mean, they look great, and I love the foiled cards.
Yeah,
you call that embossed cards, maybe.
Yeah.
I got 2 full sets of the base sets and 3 sets of all the cards except the Cyberry, where I only have 1.
Awesome.
And 1 non-open boxed.
Yeah. Just to sit there and tempt you.
Sounds like a completist to me.
Yeah, but only with the cards, right? I meant with the comics, I'm not a completist. We're gonna get to it actually in the review.
Okay. Well, we all draw our lines in different places, and you've got to, because you can't collect everything. So, no, that's good to hear, mate. And looking forward to hearing more about your fandom journey and your collection and everything in further discussions we have. But Germ's right. We do need to move on to the reviews. And so I understand we're starting with Fantomen 24 from 2019.
Yeah, that's right. It's this beautiful issue with cover by Henrik Sahlström. It has Laga in the background. It looks like the Barack Obama
Yes.
both election poster.
Yep.
And the story, you could say that also Star Wars themed, A New Hope.
And you know who that person in the ninja? They're almost like, I've managed to get myself a copy as well. She almost looks like a G.I. Joe.
Yeah, that's true. Cobra. Yeah, but we'll get to know who she is in the issue. It's the first time we get Anthony Spey art in a Phantom story, and the story is written by Mikael. I think Anthony Spey does a great work with art, actually.
Mm.
And the story takes place like there was a few months ago the big explosion in the President Palace, so the presidency has been empty for a while. Now there's a few candidates who want to take power. Not sure how much we should spoil.
Oh, let's go for all of it. If Dan doesn't want to listen to it, he can just pull out his headphones and I'll wave to him when we've finished talking about it.
So, is this a continuation
ending.
of the Sandal Singh is president or was president storyline?
That she was president, exactly. But
Yeah,
she's presumed dead, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah,
there's
no, spoil away.
Yeah, I will spoil away. So there are 3 candidates. It's like one of the good guys, and then 2 bad guys. I don't really want to spoil everything, but they basically kill off each other, and order is restored. Luage is back on the throne. So,
wow.
And I think Soul has talked about this in your podcast earlier, that he wants it to go back to the same universe. So here he does it.
He said that he might have to write the story because Clayser and Leafy didn't want to write the story. So I guess he did it.
Yeah. But
this is actually really big news, isn't it, in terms of bringing the universes back together?
Yes. Well, it's really been, so there's the panel there where he's swearing in the oath for the YouTube viewers, and for Dan, who's now got a smile on his face. So it's really been probably the only glaring difference between the 2 so-called universes.
Yeah, but it still asks the question, what happened then in the 22nd Phantom when it feels like he's again a doctor in the outskirts.
Yes.
But let's hope they
a little glitch in the Matrix
tie
there.
it together. Yeah, maybe.
It's a very good point. So what did you think of the art?
Sorry?
We're both about to ask exact opposite questions. You go first, Germ.
What did you think about the art? Like, was there anything in particular that you liked about the art, that you didn't like about it? And just a warning that Anthony will be listening to this. He's already said that he's looking forward to our review.
Yeah, no, I would say I really liked the art.
Of course you would now.
No, but I think I'm pretty honest with my reviews. There's sometimes the expression of some people gets a bit caricatured. Like there's maybe this with go around, but I mean in the whole good this is a great art, and it's very bright and nice. It's easy
the coloring
easy to read and easy to and it's pretty. I just want to add a pretty funny side story that I don't think will come up over as easy for the international readers. Like this guy, he finds some secret super intel on the nice person running for the presidency, that she bought chocolate with the state funds. And that actually that was a big scandal in Sweden when a politician did that like 20 years ago, and she had to resign and everything just because she bought some Toblerone with the state fund.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a big scandal.
When I was reading it on my app, I'm thinking, why on earth are they talking about chocolate?
yeah, that's a Swedish inside joke, I would say.
Oh, awesome.
There you go. Is that a well? And I was going to ask you about the writing. That was my point before. Germ asked about the art. I'm asking you about the writing. Did you? So start there. Is that a little subtle dig at international politics at the moment and what presidents can and can't be in trouble for?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about
Reading too
politics
much
like
into that?
this. I try to not
All right.
write into
That's
it, but I
fair.
mean, as I mentioned in earlier reviews, that I think Sol is really great at writing stories.
And look, to be honest, with the Obama type picture on the front, it can't help but be a little bit political. So while we won't delve into it, don't think there's any doubt that Fantomen is not worried too much about making some sort of political statement there themselves. So
Yeah.
Does he use?
Did you feel like the story, Mikael? I'm still asking about the writing.
Oh, all right, go for it. I was just wondering, because I don't think that actual poster actually appears in the story, though, does it?
No, you see posters of the other candidates, but I mean, he
Yeah.
was like since there's no other candidate, he basically gets it. But you can see, again, with Guran has it on his
Oh, yeah, it's on his shirt, yes. There we go. All right, Dan, your question.
No, I was just going to ask, did it feel like it was a logical progression from where we were with the president's HQ being bombed and destroyed and all the rest of it, and then all of it? But did it make sense logically? Do we know where Sandal Singh is now? Are you happy with the way that it arrived, or does it feel a bit contrived? Because it's a very short time to make that big change.
I would say like the Sandal Singh changes, that was another issue earlier this year. So this is basically only the presidency. And before this, I did this article on the Chronicle Chamber, talking about all the different presidents they had. And while I was doing that, I read through all of those stories. And I think it would be a great trade paperback to include all of these stories, I would say, because they tie together pretty good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's on the first, is it the first or the second page? Second page, there's actually a picture of the palace being reconstructed and stuff like that as well. Yeah. So it does kind of follow in with that.
Yeah, it just seems like a quick change about to suddenly from where we left it, and I'm talking about a Frew reprint from probably 18 months ago, maybe was the last time I think we've touched base with this story. Would I be right in Australia, Germ?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But it seems to follow on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is, if you look at it from the mid-90s, when like every second or third story was about Lubunga, and then you've got...
It did feel like that.
We're getting like a couple of stories a year about Sandal and stuff like that. So it's slow compared to the mid-90s.
Yeah, and
for sure.
I'm not I have no idea what's going on in their headquarters or anything, but I would guess it's easier to get the stories delivered if you have like 3 different ongoing story arcs and they're not combined. Then it's like, oh, this guy is late, I can take this story instead.
Yeah,
if they have 3 different threads.
That's a good point.
Yeah. All right.
I think that was a big issue.
Yeah, it was a very big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is an important development. It really is a very historical development in fandom history around the world. So I'm sure.
Aren't you glad you listened now?
Yeah, and I'm going to have to give Glenn and Dudley a hurry up to get this one published in Frew, because if it brings us all back together again, the quicker the better.
Oh,
so there you go.
All inclusive and loving. Dan's feeling all inclusive and loving.
Well, long may it continue. Let's see how we go. Clayster Methry will write another story and it'll all be set back on its heels. So
no wonder he doesn't want to come on our podcast if you keep bagging him.
He's got it. He just takes it in a different direction than I would. That's all. I'm happy to discuss that with him, and full respect because he's written however many Phantom stories he's written. That's all of them that more than I have. So anyway,
there is another issue. There is another story in this issue. So
is there another
Yes.
story?
Yes.
Yeah. So the second story is The Silks of Emira. And it's a daily from 1997, written by Lee Falk and art by George Olsen and Keith Williams. I mean, this is not great in any sense of the word. It's a typical of this era newspaper story. But I mean, for me, the good thing is it was only Phantom in the whole comic book and no side stories, so that's a great plus. And we get it published in Sweden. So, I mean, it was published in a Christmas album earlier, but now we got it published in the Phantom comic. Not much more to say there.
Now,
all right. So
sorry, I just want to say one more thing. In the podcast that we had with Keith Williams, he talked about how there was one time that he had to redraw a panel because George, who was the penciler, had characterized a black person in an inappropriate way. I wonder if it was this story here, because in this story there is like the natives are objectified a lot in the story. So I wonder if it was this story that he was talking about.
But at the end of the day, the ones that you're looking at and saying that are objectified are the ones that got through. So he didn't change them.
Yeah. So, but I'm just wondering. I wonder if it was this story that he did kind of change. But I'll just leave that one there.
I mean, I think they look pretty, what's it called, natural. The drawing.
Anyway.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next issue of Fantomen, which was the double episode 25 and 26. Again, I've got no idea, but I understand both of you guys have got a copy. So I'll hand over to you, to Mikael, to do your review and then field questions from Jermaine, I'm sure.
Yeah, this also includes basically no side stories. It's 2 Phantom stories, 2 newspaper stories. It's, I mean, first you can... I guess the listeners who don't watch on YouTube can't see it, but it's a great cover by Henrik Sahlström. I was earlier this year talking about what I thought would be the cover of the year. This might actually come out stronger. Let's see. It has...
That'll be a top 3 easily.
Yeah, I think so too. So it has... the main story is The Rat Must Die, that I did a review on when I was doing the Norwegian Nya Historier one.
Yes.
And I liked it then, and now I read it for my kids as well. And as I said, I really like this thug, the rat. I don't know why. Well, it's written by Tony DePaul, art by George Olsen and Keith Williams.
I know. And Jeff Weigel.
Oh yes, I was reading the wrong one. Sorry, I was reading. And actually, Andreas said that there's a difference with the version that's in the Norwegian one against the Swedish one, and I've looked, except the color of the suit then, but I can't find it. So if someone more spare time than me want to look through it, that's some great fun. And I mean, it's really good here because since we got this story in the issue before, here in the end, they didn't have to do any editing, because now we can see Laga coming here. Let's see where he is. Yeah. We didn't have to edit him out for someone else. So finally, it could be unedited.
Yeah.
And that's got to be at least part of the business decision, if you like, from Sweden to go, well, you know what, King Features haven't blinked in 20 years, so maybe we just need to make him president again, so we don't have to edit the stories and cost ourselves money that way.
Yeah.
Am I being too cynical?
I think you're being a bit cynical. I think Mikael Sol in his podcast did talk about that he does respect and love the newspaper strip and stuff
I
like
hear
that.
what you're saying. I'm just pitching. I reckon that's how he might have sold it to the bean counters at Egmont.
Well, to be honest, he probably just did it.
Could be. So the second story is The Ghost Quest, and that is written by Tony DePaul with art from George Olsen and Keith Williams. And I like, I want to say something positive here. So I like how they did the editing. Like they blow some panels up so it gets a bit more like the regular comics that are not taken from newspaper.
So have they modernized it a little bit?
I mean, they instead of just doing it unedited, three paints, they blow some up. And
it definitely looks like it. I think they did it in the Christmas album a bit as well. Because, like, for instance, if you look at, say, for those on the video, you'll be able to see it. But in 2419, they've got this huge filler panel up the top of which is just a bit of jungle, and they've got like
it's basically the top strip out of 5 strips, almost, isn't it?
Yeah. And then they've just got kind of like what we get in Frew, where it's just them tiled, where the ones that Mikael just showed us, it actually fits and looks and reads a lot more like a comic.
But
it'll be interesting. Yeah,
they only use like half the panels as well, so they get more pages out of the story, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting they did that. It might we might have to run a bit of a poll to see whether people like that or whether they like the other way. So we might have to get a photo of that, I reckon, Mikael, and then and then
we'll do that after we've recorded, because you're right. It's if you want to judge on how those two look, you're going to have to look at the YouTube for now to make a pick between the two.
Yes, and then we'll do a poll after this comes out.
And this story, I've it's not much to say about that. It's also typical daily. I think it feels like a lot of a filler story, basically.
Okay. So Christmas has come to the Northern Hemisphere. We haven't got our Frew Christmas special down here in Australia, but the Fantomen Christmas special has been out, I guess, for long enough that they've even been able to post it to Australia, because Jermaine's got his over in Perth and you're holding up yours in Sweden there. Tell us about the Christmas special.
Yeah, so great issue. This is the 75-year anniversary, so that's quite a long time.
Is that of Fantomen being published in Sweden?
No, the Phantom Christmas album. That's a bit earlier, because the Christmas album...
75th consecutive Christmas album.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
How many have you got, Mikael? You got them all?
I do not have them all. But the good thing is, like...
He's not a completist, Jim.
Yeah, because ever since 1994... they do the facsimile of the older. So, I mean, I have them all if you count these ones.
You don't need to collect the originals.
So I don't have to buy the expensive ones. But I think this Christmas album is pretty weird. Like the main stories are I have written down what it was called in English. The Temple of the Gods, the first 2 parts. And that's a 6-part story, right? With both dailies and comics, I think.
Yes.
And I mean, they are only from 2005, so it's not that long ago. And I guess then the idea is to have 2 every year, but then like 2 years. If you get the Christmas album, and then it's like, well, I get these stories, but they are part 5 and 6. I think that's a weird decision.
Mm.
Quite long time to remember. And yeah, and I gotta be honest with you, I haven't reread them. I didn't like them the first time.
I'll agree with you. The Temple of the Gods saga was has probably been my least favorite of Tony DePaul of his stable of what he's written.
Yeah, it's a bit much. I know that it was quite big in Sweden, but it never fell in my taste. And after that, we have the facsimile then of the 1969, but it's 1970 on the cover. They changed it a few times during the years, and that is 4 of the King's Comics stories.
Yes.
I have the book here, and like when you reading that one, it's all colorful and good.
So you're taking that from the Hermes Press collection?
Yeah, this is
Yes.
But like in they weren't. I guess they didn't have money back in the '69 to do it full color, so it's this black, white, and red.
Mm-hmm.
They
And
did that in a lot of the German comics as well, from memory.
yeah, I think it's a European thing because you don't have that much in Australia, right?
No.
Because old Donald Duck comics had it as well, and
Okay.
yeah, there I think lots of
Just-
comic back in
I know
the
newspapers-
60s.
I seem to remember that has got something to do with World War II and the availability of different dyes and stuff after the wars. So,
Okay.
yeah, more detail about that is available somewhere, I'm sure. But I think that's where I heard the reasoning for the red.
Yeah, and then I think it just became tradition with newspapers and stuff as well.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't do the comic justice, in my opinion, the art. But I mean,
Agree.
I think probably like if you got it back in '69, you would like it.
Mm.
But now it's more there to just be there. And then there's a first ever story first published in a Christmas album. It has always been reprints earlier, so they produced this 6-page long story written by Mikael Sol and Anthony Spey, and art by Anthony Spey again. So I guess they must have liked him since he got the new one directly. And here, this is even better than the A New Hope story, in my opinion.
So is
Well,
that
the
a 21st Phantom story?
Yes, but it's a really, like I said, six pages long.
So it will probably eventually appear as a backup story in a Frew comic.
Yeah, but it's fascinating that you should say there, Mikael, that it's the first time in 75 years that a new story has debuted in a Christmas album instead of being full of repeats. That's significant.
It is.
Yeah, it is, and like it's not the guys printing the regular issue and the guys printing the Christmas album is not the same guys.
Yes.
But
is that right?
They get help from the editors in the regular Fantomen on which stories to have, but these are like a total different bank account than these guys.
Yeah, right.
Is it still Semic? Yeah.
Yep.
So for those who don't know, Semic used to be the publishers and then they sold it to Egmont.
But the Christmas album is still published under Semic.
Yes, it was part of the original deal from what I understand. Is that how you read it, Mikael?
What did you say?
From what I understand is that the Christmas albums were really, really popular. So as part of the deal from when Semic sold it to Egmont, that they kept the Christmas album.
Yeah, because this is like lots of kids in Sweden go out and knock door from door to sell these. So they need to have a great selection to make people buy, I guess. So I think that's a reason they want it. Still want it, even though they sold off their other comic books.
Yeah.
Because it's not only Fantomen, it's like all the other big comics have
Like,
their
I think
Christmas albums as well.
X9 and some of the others as well.
Yeah.
So,
But
sorry, you go.
yeah, I found an issue, of course. I'm so picky that the index here, it's like it starts with page 1, but it should start with page 5. So nothing is actually correct in that index.
Yes.
But that's a minor thing, I guess.
Yes. Very good. Well, so, and there's something else that's special about this new story by Anthony Spay and Mikael Sol as well.
Tell us.
Well, I will. Thank you. So apparently, according to what we have been able to dig up, that this was actually now in the original article where we introducing Anthony Spay, which is on chroniclechamber.com, of course. We just did a brief introduction to Anthony, and he made mention that he submitted some artwork to both Frew and Egmont, like a submission, and this story was it. And then there was some edits by Mikael Sol and some redrawing and stuff like that. But this story here in the 2019 Christmas album was actually his submission. So that's pretty cool.
So did he write it as well?
Yes.
And then it's been edited by Mikael Sol.
Yeah, and I think there was an extra page added or something like that. But it's pretty cool that that, you know, in some artist interviews that we've done, they do a drawing of the Phantom and they submit that. Where Anthony Spay actually did a whole comic,
a whole
5 or 6 pages.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's pretty cool.
I agree, and I think it was nice as well. I like. I mean, it feels like the concept could have been fleshed out to a comic long story, but I mean, reading it like this, it's so much action and so much.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out which one it was. I think like one of the stories made for the Irish Phantom
Lightning Strikes.
Yeah, they also had a story of like 4 pages or something that was
yes,
really good, right?
Issue 3, which some people have, some people don't. Issue 3 is a whole comic full of short stories. So so I guess that would be perfect for Frew and Egmont to include as fillers and stuff like that as well. And you know, you never know. It might be the only way we actually get to read them is in a Frew or Egmont comic.
All right. Well, on that, I think, Mikael, thank you so much. I know we've taken up a lot of your time. We said before you rang that this might be a 20 or 30-minute conversation. It's getting on close to an hour. So you've proven to be a traditional Chronicle Chamber or X-Band podcaster by being able to speak. When we can draw it out of you, the recordings you send in are neat and succinct, and when you get into a chat, you're like the rest of us and just waffle on Phantom, which is fantastic. We love it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's been my honor.
Thank you.
And we're really looking forward to the card game and all the news that you have about that. We really appreciate the reviews, as we've just been talking about for the last bit.
Yes.
But obviously for you and for us and for the global Phantom community, probably the greatest excitement is going to come from that card game. And we wish you all the best as you work out your timelines and finalise the product and get that up onto Kickstarter. And looking forward to having a dedicated podcast and a lot of post support and all the rest of it as you get that going.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it too.
No worries. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Good day, mate. Thank you. All right. Well, Germ, how good's that to have Mikael actually join us live for our Fantomen review?
Yeah, no, it was a nice change to be able to talk to him. And interesting that it went for a little bit longer when I was over.
He's been about 3 minutes per comic, unless we ask him questions.
I think it's like 3 minutes for like 5 comics. But no, huge shout out to Mikael. Very exciting news. So I guess we'll move on to the Frew comics now. Eh?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we go back to, we've talked about Supernova earlier, this podcast, and Billy Zane. We go back now to Frew issue 1852, which is the 100-pager, which features the Skyband, a specially coloured version of the Skyband, which Australian audiences haven't seen before.
Yep, first time in English and in colour.
Anywhere in the world. What, didn't Hermes Press do it in colour?
No, they did it in black and white.
Well, there you go. So an absolute world first for Frew in making this a bit.
I don't think a lot of people have kind of figured out that one, that this is actually a world first in colour and in English, and in most likely probably the cleanest reproduction you'll probably ever see, on the same level as what Hermes have produced, and then it's in colour. So it's, you know, it's a huge feather in the cap with Frew, and also with Ivan Pedersen, who did the colouring.
Yes.
You know,
we talk about Norwegian influence in comics. Ivan Pedersen from Norway, beautiful job that he's done.
Yeah, and you know, he might not be everyone's cup of tea, but you cannot doubt that he has done an amazing job with the colour. It was fun to read, and
so that was going to be my question. Did you read it? Because sometimes with the older stories, and I'm thinking the replicas in particular, we skip over those because we haven't read them. Did you read this one?
I've read it, and I've flicked through it a few times and stuff like that. So first of the time, I probably flicked through it just to like look at the colours. You know, make sure that Ivan didn't sneak in a blue Phantom. Or something like that, but and then, you know, I've gone through and read it, and then there's been times where I might start at page 30 and read a section that I like and stuff. Seeing I've read the story that many times, I know the story pretty much, you know, back to front. So I've kind of, you know, like read bits and pieces of it to enjoy those parts.
So it's a brand new story. Let's review it. How does it stand up for you? Did you, because this is what, the second?
Yeah, second daily.
Second daily. So this is the second story ever of the Phantom. Ran from the 9th of November 1936 until the 10th of April 1937. So 6 month story, but one that was published 83 years ago for the first time. In that context, but as a story, you know, what did you think of the story? Was it well written? What did you think of the art?
I think actually the colour actually makes the art look better, and maybe it's got to do with the fact that Ivan's actually cleaned up a few of the panels. But in previous reproductions, you know, people are just all black and all shadows and stuff like that, and there's all spotty and stuff like that. So I think it actually, okay, this is going to sound, I think more people are going to enjoy reading it, especially younger people, in colour than they would have in black and white. And I must admit, I enjoyed, just myself reading it recently, I enjoyed reading it in colour more than what I have in the past in black and white.
I'm going to have to agree with you on that. I really enjoyed reading it in colour. It was it's a good lengthy read. Like I had to have a nap in the middle because it's a long story. But
as long as you don't nap in the podcast, you'll be fine.
That's right.
He's not here to defend himself, so you know he's only got himself to blame.
No, it was interesting. I really enjoyed, and you're right. It probably is the most I've enjoyed reading this story. So whether that's because I'm the right age for it now, or and it's a story that's better suited to a 40-odd-year-old than a 18-year-old, I don't know. But or it was the colour, but I did really enjoy reading it.
Yeah, and the story's good. Like there's definitely some elements, and we've discussed this in past comics, where where it is a sign of its time, you know. But you can kind of sense that, like for instance, the relationship with the Phantom and the Pygmy Bander, that's a little bit more palatable in this story than in the previous story as well. So you can definitely tell that, you know, it's not as bad as it probably was in the first story. You know, Duran's not.
I
not
absolutely agree, and I think that, you know, without giving my blowing smoke too far up my own backside, I like to think I've got a pretty good radar for that sort of stuff, and there's very little in this that is overly racial. Yeah, certainly, as you say, the relationship with the Bandar and the Phantom is really respectful, and he's friends, and they're working with him, not for him, all that sort of stuff. There's a bit about the native police, but you know what? Native police were an actual thing. That's a historical fact. So, you know, they were the only guys who got a skull mark, I think, in the whole story. But when you're fighting against a pirate band full of women, it's very hard, and the Phantom mentions it a number of times. He can't go around skull marking and king hitting women. So
would have solved a few of his problems, though.
And that's probably where there are going to be question marks over its suitability, but even then, you know, and now I'm looking at through a feminist perspective. There are certainly elements of this story where you go, hang on, well, while it's quite progressive in the sense that it's the bad guys that are entirely women, and are ruthless and bloodthirsty and the equal of any criminals we've ever come across in the Phantom. They still have their girly moments, which are probably not exactly true to what the case might be, and still have a little bit of the male gaze in them, if you like. So
yeah, but it's definitely a lot more progressive than what it was back in the 30s, anyway.
Oh, for its time, it would have been super aggressive. Exactly right. No, I absolutely agree with that. And as long as you're aware of that, you don't go into this thinking it's been written this year, and who would? You know, it stands up. It's a really good read.
Yeah. So, what about the story by Philip Madden and Jeremy McPherson?
I didn't like it as much as the Sky Band. Let's say that.
Yeah.
This felt like a Charlton or a 1970s Cy Barry, you know, when Lee Falk was in the psychedelic era. That's what it feels like to me.
He was taking his son's stuff, eh?
It was Lee Falk's Sergeant Pepper's moment.
Yeah, so from what we've been able to gather, not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident that this was actually originally intended to be a lightning strike story in their, when we talked earlier about their short story one. So from what we understand, that was part of that. I didn't mind it. I guess for a, 1, 2, 3, 4, for a 4-page story, you're not going to get something deep and meaningful. Sorry.
And you know what? To be honest, that's kind of the problem with the story, is because it tries to be deep and meaningful, and in only 4 pages it can't be. And so it's almost 2 stories. It's almost one really deep and meaningful and one purely preposterous. And they've tried to put them together, and for me, it hasn't worked.
Yeah. See, I think you're and maybe you're wearing your teacher's hat rather than your Phantom hat or your Phantom fan hat, and that you're picking holes at it rather than just enjoying it for what it is, a short 4-story Phantom, which gives Jeremy McPherson the chance to shine, which gives Philip Madden the chance to shine as well. Now some people, I've talked to some people, and some people got a little bit upset about the Phantom's fallibility in here, where Kitten Hillis gave him a little bit of stick about his age and stuff. But it's a comic one. We know the Phantom's getting old. If they're worried about that, wait till they read to the bottom of that page. it's a it's a question that a lot of people ask. Is he's 80 odd and he's still able to do what he is. So it's a bit of a play on that. It's a 4-page comic. I think I enjoyed it. I liked it. I will admit, if I had not known, if Jeremy McPherson did not have his credits there, I would have think that it would have been a Felmang story from Sparta or something like that. It looked like it was pulled straight out of there. Now, when you say
I would say, and I think to that point, I see this as a story that I would expect or I'd be happier with if it had appeared in a Phantom's world or a Giantsize. It's that sort of a vibe, but it's that sort of a feel for me.
Again, I personally think you're being a little bit harsh, and I think this is where, because we know that the new Egmont stories are 24 pages, and so there's 12 pages that have to be filled up, and we know that Phantom, that what's it called? Mind blank. Heart of Darkness is almost ended, and that there's room for pages, and I think this is the way to go. Little short, little fun stories, where people can read, whether it's Kid Phantom, whether it's Gaslight, whether it's the stories from Lightning Strikes or whatever. But I think these little fillers, I'm thinking, might be where we are ending up going.
Yeah, and I've got no problem with a 4-page story. I stand by the fact that it's in the psychedelic era, which is fine. I don't hate those stories, but I don't love them either. I also stand by the fact that I think it tried to be too much and too little at the same time. And I put the writer on all of that I absolutely love Jeremy McPherson's art, and just about every panel is a masterpiece, and the colouring is fantastic. And there's one panel in particular, for instance, which is the Phantom riding on the first page of the story, Phantom riding on Hero with Devil chasing. That's a almost immediately iconic image. It's so Barry. You said Phil Mang. The art is magnificent. Magnificent.
Jeremy on the looking at the chronicles at the top there. That has definitely got the likeness of Felmang.
Absolutely. So just beautiful work from Jeremy. We can't go past this one without mentioning the cover and the fact that it came with a Supernova variant. 18. Well, that's the other thing we need to mention. 1821. The printing issue.
Go on the cover first, and then we'll talk about the number.
Okay, so there are obviously the two covers there. Your Supernova variant hasn't arrived yet, Jerm. I should have thought not to post that until today so that I could show it to you. But it is posted and it's on its way to you. What are your thoughts on the two covers?
I like the black one better. I just think it's more striking, and it's more in your face. I think the comic strip in the background almost takes away too much, like the wording presenting the story of the movie on the newsagent one kind of gets lost. And I think that would have actually been better if, in my opinion, if it was just white. And then you had the black one, like you're holding up, without the comic strip in the background.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I agree wholeheartedly. So I won't add more to that. The Glenn Lumsden's image of the Phantom in particular, it is a reasonable likeness of Billy Zane in the face. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what Billy Zane's comments were about himself drawn in a format like that. And I know a few artists have done it. Like I know Velluto did it. And I know Jamie Johnson has done it as well for the Comic Con.
There is a pose like that Billy released for was of him as part of the promotions for the movie. So the pose itself is a copy of a photo of Billy Zane. I guess we're talking about how very, very, very muscular this Phantom is, as opposed to, I guess, a more lithe, realistic, if I'm going to be honest.
And he's in purple.
Hey?
And he's in purple. Glenn likes grey and he's gone purple.
Yeah, true. Well, he had to for this one, I suppose.
But no, if you actually look at his other previous Frew regular covers, he's always gone grey.
Yeah, he's also drawn the bloody markings of Tukanda or Tuganda and that sort of thing on the costume. So it's a Billy Zane Phantom costume. So hence it had to be purple.
Yeah. Now the Frew numbering was a huge stuff up.
A mess up, yeah.
It's
and to their credit, the Frew guys have never said anything but that. They said we stuffed up.
And I don't know. I guess, I've done some work in the print industry and I do a lot of work in the online industry as well. And unfortunately, errors do come up. This is a big one. I guess everyone's already had their say about that, but they would have liked their time again, especially for a key issue that this was.
Yeah,
you wouldn't want your stuff up on a key issue.
And as we've already said, the story, worldwide, first time in English and in colour, tied together with Billy Zane at Supernova and so many people getting this comic signed. And in fact, it's available for nearly $100 if you want to buy it straight off the Frew website, signed by Billy Zane. So in front of a lot of eyes, it is a shame. Yeah. But other than that, honestly, I don't think it's a big deal.
No, it's not a deal breaker.
Where am I going to file it now? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's rubbish. It's just...
And
it's 1851 with a printer's error.
I think a few people... it's actually 1852, but...
Whatever. See, that's how little it matters.
But, a lot of people have a bit of fun with that.
Yeah.
But, we'll leave that there because it's already been said.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's stay on covers and talk about what is going to be arguably
cover of the year. Claiming it now.
You have said it a number of times, but the Pit of Doom from 1853. I'm keeping my powder dry because the Christmas cover last year got into my top 3, so I have high hopes. But this is it's a stunning cover. There's no doubt about it. From a first time. Cover artist for Frew.
Frew, yeah.
Lucca, what's his last name?
Alberta.
Lucca Alberta. So first time cover artist for Frew, and it's clearly a painted cover that's been replicated or
done on the computer.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, done on the computer in the painted format.
Right.
He's done a couple of other covers for Fantomen, including, I think I've got one handy, if you give me 2 seconds. He did the Fantomen Pirates theme one last year. That's the 2018 one. And he also did the North version for the 2019 version. These are the books that were published by in the Gothenburg Book Fair. So he's done those covers. Absolutely amazing.
All 3 of those images are just stunning. It's a fantastic format for or a genre, whatever you want to say, for a Phantom artwork then cover. So I do love it, and the colouring is fantastic as well. So I have a feeling we are going to talk about that more when we do our best of 2019 podcast, and we should say now that once the Christmas cover has been once the Christmas issue from Frew has been released, then we'll have all of the covers for the year and we'll know all of the stories for the year. So we are going to run our Reader's Choice or People's Choice or Fan Favourite competition again this year using in conjunction with Frew. So yet to determine details and prizes and dates and all that sort of stuff to do with it, but keep an eye on the website for that one.
So if you don't agree with me that it's the best cover of 2019, you've got a chance to prove me wrong and vote for something else.
Absolutely. So anyway, let's this does contain 2 stories, and you've just mentioned a moment ago about the shorter Swedish stories at the moment. So this is a story with a filler, The Heart of Darkness, Chapter 6, Part 3. Now we're going to wait and review the 2 Heart of Darkness stories together tonight that we've got. So we'll start just with the Pit of Doom. The story is from a author who hasn't got lots of Phantom stories published and has had a bit of a gap, if I'm correct. Di Carlston, you probably know more there, Germ. She had a couple of stories published, I'm going to say even in the early 90s or 80s.
80s.
There
So
you
she
go.
was under a different name. She's been married. Well, no, she is married and has changed her name. So most people wouldn't know that name. But the name that most people would know her of is Di Darrell. And then the stories that she has written, which people will be aware of, is Hero's Death Sentence, which is the story which is referenced in this story actually, where Hero is basically very close to dying and then someone saves him. You actually see the Phantom cry and become very, very close to ending Hero's life after an accident as well. The Water of Life was another interesting one, and one of the ones that I really enjoyed was the White Slave Trade as well. So prior to this one, she's only done 16 stories, and then the last story was 1986. So
right. So I think that's because 16 stories is not nothing. That's a significantly published author, but to have over 30-year gap between the publication of stories, that's probably more the story there. So hopefully she's getting back into writing the Phantom, because we'll get into it in a moment. But this is quite the Pit of Doom is quite a well-written story for mine.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah, I did. It's as long as you you've got to park a little bit of Phantom at the door, if you like, or more move him into a Mad Max or a Waterworld type universe, which is she's done it well. She's made it possible in today's society well by having the Sing Pirates have this floating gambling den offshore in international waters sort of thing. But there's certainly more than a hint of that dystopian future once the Phantom is brought in shackles onto the man-made island.
Yeah, it's it is a comic as well, don't forget. The thing that I find interesting about these shorter stories is that writers have to be a little bit more creative in filling in the backstory. And I, for one, I enjoyed how we were straight into it, and then we got the previous backstory of a couple of weeks and prior, and then I think we actually got 2 flashbacks. Yeah, we got 2 flashbacks to help fill in the gaps, and so I, for one, enjoyed that. I know some people probably won't, but it's quite common in TV shows and stuff like that as well. Like Arrow has the flashbacks, has the flash forwards as well. So it's a fairly common way of telling stories in today's comic environment. So
no, absolutely, that structure is, and again, Di did a great job of finishing the story in a hurry too. So it was almost like, let's just tell the most interesting parts of the story. We don't need all of that complicated orientation part of the structure. We don't need the resolution really, and find out what happened at the end. Let's just tell the most exciting part. And
we cut the fluff.
Yeah,
and we've just got the exciting. And to be fair, it's not just written by Dyer, it's also written by Magnus Carling, who this is his first story, and he's got another one as well. So it'll be interesting to learn a little bit more about him as we go along as well. Probably the one thing that I had there's probably 2 things, but it's to do with the one plot, and that's the ape freeing the Phantom and then him jumping ashore. Like that bit kind of was the biggest stretch, but I can understand why they did that, because they had to, like you said, they had to kind of tie up the resolution quicker. But then I did like the bit on page 21 where the bad guy is saying, "How long do I have to stay still?" And then they got the other guy saying, they were right when they said I'd chosen the wrong career. That was kind of funny. So I kind of thought that was amusing. But the ape rescuing the Phantom was a little bit far-fetched, probably a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit more far-fetched than the Waterworld.
Well, it's certainly
part.
built on. It's certainly
Yeah.
built on that. Yeah. No, by that stage, you've got to go, well, I'm all in on this fantasy. But you're right, that did become more far-fetched. I agree with everything you've just said there. That was the gorilla turning was a real plot point to just say, right, we need to wrap this up. We need to get it moving again.
Yeah. But it's not by far the weakest story we have seen.
Oh, no.
I think it's probably if I was to say weak story, average story, above average, and then great story, I would say it's probably an above average story.
Okay. What was the option below?
So weak, average, above average, good story.
Yeah, look, in terms of modern stories, I think it's above average. In the grand scheme of things, it's probably between average and above average. But let's rank them when we get to our best of podcast. The artwork from Rafa Ruiz has got the pencils on this one, and Coral Martinez, both of whom we're going to have written interviews with on the on the website at some points very soon. You enjoyed the artwork? I loved it.
Yeah, really enjoyed the art. I enjoyed like the panels, like just this one here of like the close up of the ape. Just very, very good. And then I enjoyed this bit here on the other page. So I'm talking about page 16 and 17, where you've got the guy saying, "Oh, I'll bet my 2 slaves," and then he just walks past him and says, "I'll come after you later." And you see the Phantom in the foreground, but you don't see the whole bit of the Phantom. You see the guy in the background basically wetting himself. There was just those little elements that I really enjoyed. The other thing that I did enjoy was the last 2 pages from with continuation.
Yep.
So it's interesting that Sandal's still around, which we know, but but then there's a bit of unrest with Sandal and then the other higher beings where Sandal Singh will be furious when she hears what you have done. So obviously she's still in charge and she's still got a soft spot for the Phantom, which we are aware of. And then in the last panel, as the guy's getting taken away by ninjas that look like about to behead him, you can kind of see the resentment between the relationship with Sandal and the Phantom, and they're not quite happy with how Sandal's floating between the bad and the good side and stuff like that. So I kind of like those last 2 pages as it kind of added something to the continuation as well.
Okay. Well, you've read way more into those few lines than I have. That's okay. One thing I was going to ask before we move on, it's about the cover again. Heart of Darkness is not referenced on the cover as well. Wouldn't this just have been a whole heap better if there'd been a big Heart of Darkness Part 6, Chapter 6, Part 3 or whatever, a branding somewhere here?
I'm not sure, I know where you're coming from, but if you've actually looked at some of the last previous, they've always been putting it on the back cover. Obviously, there is no back cover.
Not on the back cover either.
But,
anyway,
like if you look at
I'm not going to harp on that.
It is there as well. So I get the point that you're making, but yeah. And don't forget, you'll be able to vote for this as your top cover and soon as well.
You could also vote for this as your top cover, which is 1854 by Jean Bosch. Sorry?
Or your top story.
Or this could be one or the other. They're all options, everything that we've reviewed so far this podcast and indeed this year. So Evil Lurks in the Night is the next story we're going to look at. It's 1854 from Frew. It's got the cover by Jean Bosch, as I suggested. There's a lot to talk about with the story itself. Let's start with the cover. What did you think of this one, Jim?
I've seen the original version of this, and then I've seen this.
There's your problem, isn't it?
Yeah, this I don't like this cover. I'll just be truthfully honest. The original cover I liked a lot more than this. But in saying that, that's just my opinion. I was talking to someone who knows a lot more about Phantom art than me, and he said that he loved this cover and it was one of his favourite ones. So that's art for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna call him One, because that might be how you pronounce it as well. But I think I saw this in the same place, the original in the same place that you did, which was when One Boy published it on Facebook side by side with the Frew, the finished product. And it's fair to say he would have agreed with you that he wasn't pleased with the way, particularly the colours had come out.
He didn't say that, but he, if you read a little bit into the way how he put the original and then the Frew version side by side, if you read a little bit between the lines, you could probably agree that he's not happy with the reproduction either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So,
yeah.
Look, it would have been interesting to see if we'd got it coloured the way that he had intended it to be. Because if you look at the actual image, there's nothing wrong with it. It's quite good, and it very much, obviously, because he's also the artist for the interiors, very much represents the story. So it's a shame that the colours didn't go where he wanted them to go, and so he was probably, as you say, happy to put a social media post up comparing the two and asking fans which one they thought was better, and it came down pretty heavily against what was published in the end. But
yeah,
anyway.
I wonder how much Frew has in say about that, or whether it's whether like they had to change it or whatever, or whether.
Oh, look, at the end of the day, it's twofold, isn't it? Because
yeah,
someone has coloured this, and we don't know who that is, and certainly not having a go at anyone, whoever had done it, just to say that some people will like it, some people won't. So the artist who did it, and then at the end of the day, Frew have approved it and said, "Yep, let's go to print with it." So it's a twofold thing.
Yep.
Anyway, the story itself, Evil Lurks in the Night. This is written by Peter Anderson, who was also the author. Frew readers would recognise him from the story Jungle Love, from the trade paperback. Probably fair to say that this is a different type of story.
Yeah, and we put that in our notes purely because to kind of highlight the fact that it's the same writer, but it's totally different. It's like, we're talking about psychedelic before. It's like, must be, dual personality or something. His humorous side that is evil psychedelic.
Evil Lurks in the Night is a horror story. There's no other way of putting it. There's a bit of convoluted backstory, really, I'm going to say, in terms of the third Phantom and rescuing an assassin from the king. But it's all just an excuse to put him in this really, and you've got to read it to understand how you can go from being a guy who's the Phantom, who spent a year in the job and comes back to London to visit his uni mates, for want of a better term, who in the first hour thwarts an assassination attempt of the king, decides he's got to chase the assassin down, ultimately finds the assassin.
Is allowed to by the king as well. The king allows him to go, which is fairly far-fetched as well.
And ultimately winds up in a cave with an underwater cave with 50+ cannibals from an incestuous family. So it's when you put it as bluntly as that, it seems like, how the hell could you do that? But it's been done, and effectively, like the plot points are a little bit heavy, but yeah, okay, I see why you did that to get to that.
But to be fair, the Swanee Bean and his family did exist as well, so it's not like it was all from his imagination.
No, I figured it probably was from some sort of legend, or and all legends have their basis in some sort of fact. So anyway, it's an entertaining read. If you're into your horror stories, you'll probably love it. For this story, I think Joan Boyce was the perfect artist.
Yes, agree.
Particularly in black and white, which is how we've seen it. And in fact, it hasn't been published anywhere else, has it? So
no, because it's actually a Frew story. It's not a Swedish story.
It's been commissioned by Frew. Yep, yes. Absolutely.
Which I thought was interesting how Dudley had to highlight that fact.
I don't know that I've actually read the message.
His message from the publisher. At first appearance, it may be confused with an Egmont story, but I can reassure you that it is a freshly minted first publication by Frew.
Yeah, So it's in the Frewniverse, not in Team Fantomen world.
yeah, if you want to talk about those. But I enjoyed it. Interesting that it's a longer story. It's not the 24 or 22 pages. It's gone the full, 32. Is it 32 pages?
31.
31
34. Sorry,
pages.
34.
So it's, so
32. It starts on page 3, so it's a 32-page story. And look, it probably did feel a bit drawn out in the end. The Phantom, neither the Phantom nor Kit Walker appears on the last 5 pages, and which has got to be pretty
page
unusual.
30 onwards.
I
like that because it, and I get your point, but it kind of, especially in a sense, it's like this is a Frew story, so it's not like it's a Team Fantomen story where they've got their cut off has to be this number of pages. This is Frew. Frew have got 36 pages to fill in a Frew comic. So if they want to add extra pages, they can. The only thing that it's going to do is cost them extra money. And I like the fact that it kind of, gives a little bit extra about what's going on. And then there's the survivors, I guess you could say, with their own little swine, I guess you want to call them, better of a word. I kind of like it because it, sometimes you get some movies and it wraps up nicely, and then you get other movies where it's like it leaves it totally open and then it's just ends there, and you never get a sequel or anything like that, but it's always just hanging there and it can like nag at you. This has the potential to do that, and it allows the legend to be carried on as well. And that the Phantom can't always solve every problem. So I like the drawn out ending.
All right, no worries. Well, look, I think it was an enjoyable story. You've got to probably be in the mood for it.
Yes.
And you know what? I was thinking about younger audiences and that sort of thing. While I probably wouldn't give this to Gus, my 10-year-old, to read, if he found it, and he'd probably be pretty horrified. He's probably too young to read it. But a 13, 14-year-old, I think, would still quite enjoy this. And that's the sort of age where you enjoy those. Well, for me anyway, that was the sort of age where I enjoyed those sort of horror flicks before I grew out of them again.
Like, what was it? I Knew What You Did Last Summer and Scream and all those pathetic movies.
Yeah, and the plot to this is better than that. So, all right. True. Now, we're going to get on to, unless you've got anything else you want to say on that one.
No, happy to move on.
All right, we're going to get on to a story that I know that you have been chomping at the bit to talk about, and that's Blood Rain and issue 1855, published by Frew. Why don't you tell us why you've been so looking forward to talking about this story?
Okay, so for those who don't know, it's a Team Fantomen story. We've done an article about it. We've also done a review on it online as well, where we've talked about the concept and also about how the flow of 8 different artists coming together.
Now, wait up. You're just skipping over that. What are you talking about, 8 different artists? Explain.
Okay, so this is called... So Frew readers are used to jam covers. Supernova issues for the past, 3-4 years have all featured a jam cover, which is featuring 4 to 6 different artists doing different panels, and it's being jammed together onto a cover, with the Supernova. So this is the same concept, but 8 different artists doing 3 different pages each in a story. So we've got, starting off with, for the YouTube videos, we're starting off with Velluto, and then we go off to Henya Bade, then we go to Alex Subiak, then we're going to Join Books, then Carrie Lepanan, then we got Carlos Pedranzi. This is probably the weakest, from the weakest point of view with the art. Then you've got, which was Carlos's, then you've got Cesar Spadera, and then you're ending off with Rafael Ruse, who we were just talking about as well. So there's a lot of different going on. It would have been a huge task. It's to be fair, it is a concept to try and get interest and try and get some sales, in the sense that it's something different than it's got that novelty type of feel that we haven't seen it before.
Is that effective in terms of getting sales though? Because you don't know that that's the case until you pick it up and you've taken it home anyway.
Probably from new readers, no. But in the sense of, say, for instance, if you're a casual reader, you might pick it up because it's something different. And this is the point that I think that it probably should have been a special issue, like, say, for instance, a Supernova issue, or because it had the potential to have a little bit of hype. And obviously, the hype's not going to be as big, probably, as in Frew as it is in Team Fantomen, in the sense that it was a Fantomen story rather than a Frew story. But I think it could have had a little bit of hype, and it could have had a jam cover to go with it as a Supernova issue. Something a little bit different. Could have been part of there's different ways. It couldn't be like a Christmas special, because we've already got like that Christmas special, which is the daily and Sunday stories. But I just felt like maybe Frew missed the boat a little bit, in the sense that it was a cool novelty, and it just got slapped in a single issue rather than something that might have had a little bit more hype.
So I understand what you're saying. I can see your argument, but I also remember we had almost exactly this discussion on the last podcast when we talked about Matt Kime's story, the Ray Moore replica, so to speak. And, if really cool and interesting and novel things like this are popping up once every 4 to 6 weeks, which is as often as we're recording, then maybe they don't need to be part of don't need to be a special. There's just a lot of special things happening at Frew. And even the day-to-day ones are worth picking up. So,
that's definitely, and I don't think everyone would agree with what I said. I think to be honest, probably some people will just look at it and go, yeah, it was just a normal story, and that's fine.
Well, we do want to talk about the story because it deserves its own review. As a story in the art. So let's talk about the art and the way that those 8 different artists came together. And there's a really insightful and instructive essay from Andreas, the author, at the end of the essay, which I really enjoyed. It was fantastic to read that. This is difficult to park your knowledge to one side, but if you didn't know that there was 8 different artists and you just picked it up casually and you sort of skipped, you're a new reader, you skipped over that box, how far through do you reckon you'd realise what was going on?
I think the Henya Bade was fairly obvious, because it's going from Sal to Henya, there's a big difference. Sal's clean,
but as Andreas points out, it's done really cleverly, because you don't ever see that. You're on Sal's page and you turn over, and it's a whole, and so you don't have them to compare side by side. I think that's cleverly done. I think that's
a couple of the other pages don't do that from memory, like Henya to Alex don't do it.
No, well, it comes in threes. It's not going to happen every time, but it is different scenes as well.
Yeah. No, I think there was. What I will admit, like, it would have been cool to see, and I'm going to have to dig out the issue again. It would have been cool because basically all the flashback parts of the story was while it was raining. It would have been cool if that was like in just black, white, and red, like the old newspaper style. And then even the rest was, so it would have been cool to kind of see the colour changes, because I think that would have helped identify the art a little bit better.
Yeah. Although if it had had the one colorist do the whole story, then that might have blended them a little bit too.
Yeah, true. It could have.
I agree with what you said earlier about the only time. Well, it's because of the clever idea of Andreas to have the older artists and the ones we're more familiar with do the flashbacks. I think that really helped highlight what's happening now and what has happened in the past. That really helped. And the fact that every scene finished and a new artist took over for the next scene, I think that really helped. It was Carlos Pedro. It was Carlos Pedrozzini's part that I thought, I would agree. That sort of stood out and was the bit that was, I guess, glaringly different to the rest. It just was it's a very different style.
Yeah, and obviously there is different styles because we're talking about eight different artists, but it was, I guess, I hate dishing artists and stuff, but it almost seemed unprofessional or not at the high standard of what the other artists were.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have been that harsh, to be honest, but it didn't. It's more simplistic. And again, it's a very different type of style. So it's far and simplistic is what I'm going to come back to.
And I like the simplistic in a sense, but it just I don't know.
Unfortunately, it's a natural thing, isn't it? When there's 8 artists lined up together inside the same story, you're going to say, well, which one was my favourite and which one was out the other end. So, Anyway, as a concept, I really liked it. As the way that it was executed, I really liked it as well. And a lot of it has to do, and I know Andreas sort of says, it was just an idea that I had, but I think it was a really important idea, the way that he chose, or they chose, which artists drew which scenes.
And it will be interesting because it definitely allows room for more of the same concept in the sense of, we've got the fact that the Phantom has lost his memory. And I'll be straight up, I'm not a fan of the amnesia drug.
Okay, so we're talking about the story now.
But it will be so it'll be interesting to see whether they do this again using the same concept and the same story, or whether they just have a story where the Phantom's reading from Chronicles and they use that way of having another jam, or whether they follow on with the story. So
you can't do it twice. I don't think you can't. You couldn't come again and write another story where the Phantom has been affected by amnesia powder. I mean, it is the sort of thing that you use it once and you can't go back there.
There's
in a sense like this.
It does say that that there was I think it's kind of hanging in the sense that there is the potential that following on from this story that there could be other adventures, but I also think that it sets a precedent, or sets a model or whatever, or a blueprint where they could have another jam story with the Phantom reading adventures from the Chronicles, whether it's to do with this story plot or not. But it'll be interesting to see whether they do that.
Yeah.
Or whether it's
Fair
just
enough.
a once-off.
Fair enough.
Did you like the actual story?
I did. I did like the actual story. I actually thought it was it had a very folk feel to it, while it used the because I guess of Witch Mountain and that sort of stuff, Witchman's Mountain and that sort of stuff. While it was still using the lore that Tony DePaul has brought in, like the Bandar's amnesia powder is one of his inventions. So it had a very genuine, true to what I understand to be Phantom lore feel to it. So I quite enjoyed it in that sense. I did.
Yeah. No, I think it was. I'm glad we got it. So yeah, I'm happy to move on.
Cool. All right. Well, moving on, we are talking about Heart of Darkness because Chapter 6, Parts 3 and 4 have been in these episodes. Part 4 was in Blood Rain, which we've just finished talking about, and part 3 was In the Pit of Doom. My one-step plan for this was, because you read them and I don't, I was going to let you talk about them while I flicked through, and I'll either add nothing or a little once you finish talking about Heart of Darkness.
To be honest, I don't really think there's much we could really add. Like, we're kind of just wandering around the countryside, I guess, getting some information that we can use towards the end game, I think. I think we're pretty close to, I think Dudley said in one of the messages of the publisher there's like 13 or parts left or something like that. So there's, maybe a dozen parts left. So maybe another year of this story. And so it just kind of feels like we're gathering some information, and then we're going to have the end part where we're dealing with I can't remember what number Phantom this is, to be honest. Yeah. First, second, or third Phantom. So, there's a lot of the first, second, or third Phantom in this. But yeah, I don't really think there's much more we can really add to it. Yeah.
All right, then.
I think we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, let's leave it at that. Having clicked through it, it is certainly art by Jean Boyce, and I like it, but not going to read it. All right.
It is hard to follow. I think you definitely have to be a fan, a hardcore fan, or basically having to do a podcast still.
All right. Well, it's not getting me reading it, even though I do a podcast. Let's talk about something more interesting, and that is Giantsize Phantom number 10. Now, we've actually got Giantsize 10 and 11 to review, because somehow we overlooked Giantsize 10 last time we did a Comics and News. So apologies, Giantsize fans, who were, I'm sure on the edge of their seats as we went through the podcast, just waiting for us to talk about Giantsize 10. We never got to it. Let's talk about it now. It actually was a very Phantom-heavy Giantsize, possibly the most.
You joke, but there was the reason we actually realised we missed it was actually because a listener, actually got in contact with us and said, "Where's your review of Giantsize 10?" And I said, "Oh, it'll be there somewhere." And he goes, "No, I don't think it is." And so, you joke, but someone has actually contacted us and saying, "You have forgotten the issue. Can you please review it?" So a huge shout out to Shane, one of our dedicated listeners, who pointed out to us that we have dropped the ball.
And it was a bad ball to drop, because, as I said, very Phantom heavy issue of Giantsize. In fact, at least 3 stories that are Phantom stories, which is probably, I think, mostly we get 1 Phantom story in a Giantsize. This has got 3.
Yeah, and this is probably my most favourite Giantsize, I would say. So what the Phantom stories we've got is Sir Phantom, Knight of the Round Table, which is a Ulf Granberg and Jamie Val story. It's been voted like top Phantom story for a few different times, and it's a classic. Yeah, it's a classical yarn. I'm assuming you didn't like it.
Is it though? Has it really? This has not been voted best Phantom story.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has. Let's have a look.
No.
Maybe it hasn't. I thought it did.
I mean, I didn't hate it, but it's not a best Phantom story, surely. While you look that up, I'll go over the others. So that's a reprint from the first time it's been reprinted for a long time. It was originally written in 1975. It has appeared in a Frew before.
Has it been? No, it hasn't been.
I'm sure I read.
It hasn't been published in a Phantom by Frew before.
Was an Egmont story. The story takes place before the Eye of Merlin in Frew 11 in 1338. It's been printed here for the first time. Yes, you're right. So it did reference, though, another story, or was about another around the. it wasn't an unfamiliar tale. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. There's been elements that have been produced before.
Okay.
There's the stories where the Phantom gets the sword and stuff like that. So
So very quickly, the Phantom has a dream or is magically encanted, or however you want to put it, back to the days of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and Merlin the Magician and all that sort of stuff. So I'd be stunned, to be honest, if that was in 1975. That can't have been best story of the year.
I'm just, where are we? Best story winners. Sweden. Just trying to find.
You put it in its place. It's a fantasy story. If you just go, okay, here's what it is, and I'll enjoy it as a piece of fan fiction.
They haven't, because they didn't start doing the votes until 1978.
Right. Okay. All right.
So the Legends of the
if you're
Sword
listening to this, I
Part
apologise.
1.
I don't want to sound incredulous that it might be considered the best story, but it's not terrible. But yeah. Anyway, let's talk about it while we're here. And I've already sort of said what I think about it. That it's
I enjoyed it.
You enjoy it for what it is. It's okay.
It's a story.
It's an excuse to get into the Knights of the Round Table.
Yeah, and you got to remember it was created for the Swedish, Scandinavian, European market, and those elements were probably more interested, or the readers of that time in Europe are probably more interested than what, say, us in 2019 are. So
I even without that, like, it was interesting enough, as I said, but just anytime. So the earliest Phantom was what, 1535. The first Phantom took his oath or was born or something. 1535. If you're going to suddenly go and set that character thousands and thousands of years earlier, then
hundreds, mate, hundreds.
1,000. When was King Arthur?
Well, there's debate whether King Arthur was even.
Exactly. So, anyways, let's say 1,000.
But yeah, it's not thousands, but.
Yeah, okay. But still, it may as well be. Once you go back 100 years, it's still not the character. So it's not the
and Sweden has, Team Fantomen has had a history of, there's been the whole Phantom Gladiator, there's been the whole, there's been other elements and stuff like that, which
and
probably
they've sent him into the future with the cyber Phantom. So
the cyber Phantom was based in today's world, but there was the 2050 Phantom.
Yeah, so lots of possibles and maybes. This is definitely impossible and not really, but a fun story, I suppose.
Yeah.
If you read it as it was all a big dream.
I think that's probably the best way of putting it, is that I don't think it was supposed to be adding to the Phantom lore. I think it was just, hey, let's stick the Phantom with King Arthur. And
with King Arthur. I want to write a King Arthur story, and I have to write Phantom stories.
Let's have a bit of fun.
So anyway, in that sense, it was fun enough. What about Revenge of the Sing Pirates? Now, this had been printed in a Charlton before by Joe Gill and Pat Boyette. It's only a short little story, 4-6 pages, something like that.
They all are. I didn't mind the story. It is what it is. The Charlton stories of that era, and we've talked about it in past Giantsizes. We've talked about it in our reviews with the Jim Aparo book and stuff like that. They are what they are. They're short. They're cheaply made. The writers basically just giving room for the artist to shine. And it is what it is. There's some nice panels, but the stories aren't going to win story of the year.
And I just think that they're little things, but they're important things, and they're not hard things to get right. So, for instance, the Sing pirate ship has a flag, and the flag in a black and white version kind of looks, if anything, like the South African flag. With the way the arrow is designed on it and all the rest of it. but it's not the seven circles that we know the Sing Pirate flag is, or you could go to the Spiderweb if you want to go to the movie. But that was disappointing that they didn't use the seven circles. So,
Okay, so
that's
so
pretty obvious elements of Phantom lore that they haven't included.
So what should Frew do? Should Frew leave it, or should they ink it and put the 7 circles on it?
Oh no, just leave it. It is what it is. Like Giantsize, one of the points of it is to reproduce. There's all sorts of points to Giantsize when you look at what's being put out through it. But one of them is let's get reprints of old stories exactly as they were. This same story has got spelling mistakes that I'm sure that Dudley or Glenn would have seen as they went through and edited it. Tandem spelt with a U just looks ridiculous. Like there's a number of editorial contributions you could make, or you could just go, right, well, it's just, where do you draw the line? If you're going to redraw the flag, then you should go back and fix the spelling errors. And if you're going to do that, then you may as well try and tidy up the plot point, you know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't reckon they even picked up on the spelling mistakes. If the third Phantom's writing hero and picnic spelt with a K, I don't think they picked up on those ones either. And that's a bit of a shout out to Dudley, who had a little dig at me previously about my English skills.
And the story that was in Blood Rain, wasn't it? That both of those errors.
No, one of this picnic with the K was in Blood Rain, and the third Phantom writing hero. I was speaking to him in a speech bubble.
Was in Evil Lurks. That's right.
He was in Evil Lurks. So yeah. But no, I guess one of the reasons why I enjoyed this issue probably more than Giantsize 11.
Can we talk about the third story, which is the first one in the book and the first?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get to. Was the fact that it so for those who don't. Because the Phantom Crusader, this is following on from the Egmont story.
Yes, Glenn, I think, must have an Egmont story back in the distant past that he really quite enjoyed.
No, it wasn't actually that far away. It was
1484.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
that's
there was a couple
500 issues ago.
It's not that long ago, mate.
500 issues. There'd be lots of publishing companies that would kill to put out 500 issues, let alone be following on a story that had its one and only printing 500 issues ago.
Yeah, so I kind of liked it, and I guess it's interesting whether they have to because this is done by the Australian duo Andrew Constant and Jason Paulos. I think Jason's art matches well with this type of story. You know, they're busy. There's a lot going on. There's the ship. There's the fighting. There's the debris from the fighting, and it matches it quite well. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see kind of where this goes, and I suppose the Phantom's intrigued to see where it gets up to as well. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and look, while I'm pretty confident that if I was to go back and read issue 1484, I probably would go, "Oh, that's my Phantom."
Yeah, you would, because it's basically the Phantom picking up that there could have been someone who is related to who was a Crusader, and then there's the Phantom Gladiator. And,
yeah, exactly. So exactly the same sort of thing that I was just Egypt. Critical of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phantoms in history before the Phantom exists. So, the Phantom's got such a rich history. Why do you, unless you've just got a real quirk who I desperately want to go back and talk about historical events prior to 1535. There's no real need to. But anyway, I understand why people do. I'm a historian myself. I enjoy different periods of history, so I understand why you want to do that. I think in terms of the way it's been done, it's actually really cleverly done. To bring in Minerva Brooks on the last page, who I guess has become, against my own probably better judgment, has become part of the Phantom world because she's been in Team Fantomen stories so often. Tony DePaul might drop her into a Sunday panel or something one day and make her real. But until then, she's familiar enough that I enjoy seeing her again in this story. So well done, Andrew, for bringing that one in. And the rest of the story, it's fun. And what if a Phantom was back then? But
and I wonder whether. I wonder how it kind of fits in with the license as well. Whether they, where it fits in with the Phantom license or something
well, I think
like that as well.
The Phantom as a character is in the last panel. The story is called, if you look at the first page of the story, it's called The Phantom in Coming Home. So that makes it look like
the Phantom Crusader Coming Home.
Look at the screen. So see the page, the first page. The top.
Yeah. So I was talking about the splash page. Go back.
No. The next page. It does say The Phantom is Coming Home. So, that makes it a Phantom story. King Features have got to sign off on this, surely.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. And then you've got Sir Falcon, which has got a lot of with what Shane Foley's done as well. And there's a lot of Phantom influence in that as well. And then you've got the new characters. Now, correct me if I'm right or wrong, but we've seen the end of the Scorpius, haven't we? That saga.
No, I don't think so.
Or is that still going? I thought that
was still going on. I thought we've seen two parts, and we've seen I don't know,
there's been
eight of 12 chapters or something like that.
I thought we had finished that.
No, I don't think so. I think that was. You might be right.
Because I was just wondering, because I was reading, because this has got Sir Falcon, who's Shane's kind of favourite, and there's nothing to do with the Scorpius parts, and so I was just wondering. I can't remember whether we had actually finished it or not. I'm just going through.
As I say, I kind of expect. I pick up a Giantsize expecting to read more Scorpius. So whether that means it's finished or I'm just keen to see more, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, we didn't do our research on that part, but no, I enjoyed. See, the thing that I like
Phantom
about
Wiki
this
doesn't determine either way.
Yeah.
Phantom Wiki just confirms that Scorpius is in it.
The thing I like about this, and I think and this is, I guess, where I didn't enjoy Giantsize 11 as much, is that there's new content in here that's got enough Phantom to keep me interested, where Giantsize 11, I haven't read yet. I have not been able to read it. I don't even know where my copy is, to be honest, because that's
what it's looked like. That's if you're looking for it.
I love the cover from Glenn and stuff like that, but there's not enough Phantom in that from a Phantom point of view, from a Phantom reader's point of view, to interest me, compared to, say, Giantsize 10, where there's news stories, there's the Phantom Crusader, there's 2 Phantom stories, and then there's enough Phantom elements in Sir Falcon to keep me interested. And so then I'm reading those, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'll keep reading it. And then there's another Sir Falcon story, which he's not the worst character. Then there's a Phantom Range, short Phantom Ranger, and then there's the Red Archer, which wasn't actually too bad. So this Giantsize 10 was probably by far one of the more popular ones that I read and enjoyed. Giantsize 11, it didn't do me anything at all.
Right. Well, I would say that Giantsize 11, I've read more of it than you have, by the sounds of it. You're right. There is far less Phantom content, and I sort of flagged that when I talked about the introduction to Giantsize 10, because that is unusual in the amount of Phantom content we've got in that. So it's probably not surprising that you should like Giantsize 10, given that we're a Phantom podcast and we talk about the Phantom, and it was lots of Phantom. Giantsize 11, probably returns more to the typical giant size, with the exception that it has no original content, whereas certainly, as you said with Shane Foley, there has been original content in most of these. The Phantom story is the living legend, and they say at the start we don't know who wrote it and we don't know who drew it, only that this guy who people think didn't. It's from Charlton again, and again typical of the era. It's only a little 6-page story. It's nice enough.
I think it's an Italian artist.
Well, you need to get in touch with Glenn because nobody knows. So if you know, let him know. The Raven I actually did then go on and read, and I enjoyed that as a story. But it's not Phantom, so I'm not going to discuss it too much. Catman and Kit, again, I read it, I enjoyed it, but I'm not doing a Catman podcast, so we're not going to spend heaps of time on it.
See, I've never got into Catman as much.
Sorry?
Catman's not my favourite.
No, and most fandom collectors, I think, are just going to pick this one up. Maybe if they read the first 6 or 7 pages and then go, okay, that's nice, and then put it in its bag and board and get rid of it, sort of thing.
And that's where we're lucky that Glenn Lumsden does good covers, because it does encourage us to actually buy it.
Yeah, for sure. But again, there's a whole nother market, I think, for Giantsizes that are not just Phantom fans. So I'm sure that they will really love that one. So the only criticism I'd say of the modern criticism that you might have of the Living Legend story is that the Phantom decides very quickly that he needs to kill an elephant. In the course of one panel, it goes from there's a crazy elephant and boom, I need to destroy that elephant. So he hasn't even sighted it. But so the vegans and that mob in these days will probably have kittens with that. But anyway.
Can we say that?
Anyway.
Are we allowed to say that?
Vegans will have kittens. I don't know. if they ring me up, I'll pass any complaints to Jermaine Parker in Western Australia.
Yeah, I really don't care.
All right, we need to move on. This is going to be an epic podcast now, especially by the time we having heard from Mikael, which we didn't expect.
Yeah, thanks, Mikael. You sent us over the 2-hour mark. It's all your fault.
It's all your fault. We do want to talk about another. Yeah, exactly. We do want to talk about another book that we've received. We both have a copy of, and that's the O Fantasma. Now, I'm going to absolutely no idea how to say the name of that, but it's in search of the lost treasure. Basically, is I think the translation in search of the lost city is my understanding of the translation. But it's a reprint of the Hermes Press commissioned "Danger in the Forbidden City" by Velluto, the artist, and Peter David, the author. You have got a copy of this one as well, Jim?
Yeah. If you're intrigued about the story, you can actually listen to our past podcasts, and actually Sel has talked a lot about it in his podcast with us as well. So,
and we did a YouTube video review of the Hermes Press hard cover of this as well.
Now, I think the main reason, this is kind of going to fly in the face of what I said previously, but I think the main reason why a lot of people have got their hands on this is because it came with, It came with a skull ring, which, I said previously that I'm not a skull ring, I'm not a ring type of person and stuff like that, but I did pick this one up. It's not easy to get a hold of. Your best bet is, if you are after this, basically to contact a Phantom fan in Brazil, and they'll be able to sort it out for you. It's probably going to set you back $50 minimum, maybe even more than that. But it's a nice book, even if it's, obviously. Hang on, why did you get it for someone who only collects the Phantom in your native tongue?
That's a good question. Because I did get a copy, and part of it was because of the ring, as you say. It only fits on my pinky, but there it is.
You're really fat, or it's a small ring?
It's a tiny ring. My eldest daughter can't put it on, and my middle daughter can. But no, the reason I got this was because I was getting other stuff from Brazil, and I thought, well, since there's a box coming from Brazil anyway, I'd ask my contact to get a copy of this and throw it in, because I wouldn't have got it if that was all that was coming, but because there was a box that was coming and the ring was the extra incentive, that's why I picked it up. And case in point, mine's still in the shrink wrap. I'm undecided as to whether to open the shrink wrap or not, and I was going to be interested to see what you had to say about the insides and any comparison with Danger in the Forbidden City as to convince me, should I open this up or should I keep it in its pristine condition?
I basically opened it up to be able for tonight's podcast. So it's got the normal trade paperback. It's a beautiful printed copy. Not sure if you can kind of see that, but there's like background images of what it is.
Oh, is there? That looks just plain black from...
Yeah, so it probably looks, for the YouTube videos, it's not going to be the best, but let's see if for the audio podcast only, it's not going to be the best podcast audio, but for the YouTube viewers, you probably still can't see it, but like there's attention to detail in this. They're obviously great Graham Nolan fans because they've used this image twice, which was a Graham Nolan, what do you call it? Yeah, so now you've got the two hardcovers here. There is subtle differences. So say, for instance, like this is the Herms one. The sizes are a little bit different. This is the inside with the little skull marks. The inside of the Brazil one is black. And so there's subtle differences. They basically had the artistic license to be able to, as the back covers, for example, they've had the artistic license or the publishing ability to be able to change some things. Now, I compared some of the interior artwork, and the Brazil version, the art, the colours seem a little bit darker. Like when I know enough to get myself into trouble when it comes to colouring, but with printing and stuff like that, you need your blacks to be black and your whites to be whites. And then if you get the black's really black and the white's really white, it gives you more colour, or gives you more wider spectrum of colour in between the two colours. And in looking at the two books, I would say that the Mythos, the printing, the colour, the printing of the colour is better than what the Herms is.
Really?
Yeah, but it's pretty much the same book. But this is a good book. So if you're like me, who likes to get a bit of everything, or if you're a ring collector like Gary or some other people and stuff like that, it is worth getting and it is worth hunting down. But for the majority of people, they're probably not going to even bother getting it. But I like it. I'm glad I got a copy. And yeah, this is by far, this cover is also more important or more favourable to me than the Sean Joyce cover as well.
Yeah, and I do have, you probably do too, this cover as the poster that was sent out to LCSs to advertise. I've got that framed up on the wall just over there. So I do love this. I do love this cover.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the two, if you put them spine by spine, the Danger in the Forbidden City is reasonably thicker than the Mythos book, but that may be because it's still shrink wrapped too. The spines do look different.
Yeah, no, in the Herms one. Sorry, I'll just again for those on YouTube. So you've got all the pencils and the ink examples and stuff like that. Like that isn't in the Mythos version.
Okay.
But the cover
so those
gallery,
behind the scenes things.
Yeah, the article with Sal in trench coat, that's not included either. But the cover gallery is included.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. So there's extra stuff in here, and it's a great article, and I love seeing Sal in a trench coat. You know, it's very iconic. It's very cool and stuff like that. But you know, I like the fact that it's not just a carbon copy.
Yeah.
So I do like that. You know, they do look nice. They're going up on my
And is
bookshelf
there-
behind me.
But
And
is
I'm
there?
happy.
There's nothing in here that I'm not going to be able to see in
No,
the.
no.
There's no fresh art or anything for the
No,
Mythos version.
and if I was you, I would keep it shrink wrapped.
Sounds like it's staying in the shrink wrap.
Yeah.
But the ring's come out of its bag, and I really do like that's a unique ring that not everybody in Australia is going to have. So I'm pretty happy to have that one.
It's a nice design. It's too small.
Yeah.
I wish it was bigger, but I'm not sure whether it'll be interested to know whether it was designed to wear or whether it was just like a crackerjacker bonus at the bottom of the cereal box.
Well, and it's not a heavy metal. It is metal,
Yeah.
which is cool. It's not a heavy metal. I'm sure that, again, if I gave it to my 10-year-old son, it probably would fit his finger, but I haven't even shown it to him because he's not getting it.
He'll use it.
And I have a feeling if he sees it and knows it fits him, he's going to take it. So it's going on the high shelf, out of reach of small hands. Very
wise.
All right. So we do need to hook on. That's all we can do, really, in terms of reviewing anything coming out of Brazil. We know there are other Mythos comics, and we tried to cover those in the last episode with Jermaine. But if there's any listeners who are from Brazil and who would like to give us an English language, because that's what we can understand, review of any of the comics that come out over there, or indeed anyone for Fantomet in Norway, Norwegians who would like to do that for us as well, or the Hungarian comic that's come out recently as well. If anyone is listening who has access to, can read those and can review them for us in English, we'd love to get your recordings for the podcast. You there?
Yep.
You there?
Yeah.
And it's recording straight away, apparently.
Yeah. Is that because of the time?
No. Oh, I don't know.
So
maybe I did
for a
2-hour meeting.
You know how you got to send a end time to it?
Yeah, maybe I just need to. I didn't think we'd go for 2 hours, but anyway, just got the outro to do.
Yep.
What was the last thing you heard?
Basically, you were saying we try and review, but if you're from Brazil and you can review for us in English, like what Mikael does. I think that's where you were going.
All right. Well, I might start that bit again. All right. Well, that's pretty much the best that we can do in terms of reviewing Mythos publications. At this stage, Jermaine did get some of the earlier Mythos ones from in the last podcast, and we had a bit of a chat about those. But if you're an actual Brazilian who lives in South America and has access to these and can review those for us, or indeed if you're in Norway and you want to review the Fantomet issues for us, or in Hungary and you want to review those issues for us, I guess the only rider is that we poor schmucks can only speak English, so you need to be able to review them in English for us. We'd love to be able to do that and have them on the podcast in the same way that we have with Mikael. So anyone who's listening who can do those, by all means, get in touch with us.
Yes.
All right, so that pretty much brings us to the end. It's a bit a longer one because there was a lot to get through, and Mikael basically just wouldn't shut up. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Poor guys, they're really cool.
I'm joking, Mikael. That's Australian humour, mate. I'm absolutely having a go. It was a real pleasure to have you on, and really loved hearing from you and the conversations that we had about not just the comics, but your card game as well. Very excited for that one. Yeah. So in the meantime, we hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. If you've enjoyed it enough that you'd like to contribute rather than continue to get a free podcast, there's ways that you can do that. If you go to the website, you'll see a link there for our Patreon account. That's a place where you can donate and support in the podcast from as little as $1 a month. If you support at $5 a month, you get access to the Phantom Preservation Project, which is a digital online treasure trove of all things Phantom. It's growing all the time. There are some more additions to come in December. School holidays are upon me, so I've got the chance now to move a bunch of stuff across to that. Looking forward to putting in some new things for people to enjoy for their Christmas breaks. And there is a little Christmas bonus that everyone's going to enjoy, we hope. Do I want to give more clues than that, Jern?
No. I think basically last year we gave 5. We just basically gave access to 5 or 10 things for everyone, and we just want to do it again.
Yep. So that is, you mean for everybody, not just the $5 subscribers?
Not fans, not Patreon $5. It's kind of for everyone, just to kind of give you a bit of a taste of what you can have access to, and
all right. Well, news to me, but I'm sure it's something we can do.
Well, it's on the run sheet, mate.
I read the run sheet. That's not what it said. I actually, now that I reread it and think about it in your context, yes, I get that, but I didn't see that in the first instance. Doesn't matter. We'll make sure that it happens and everybody has an opportunity to do some merry phantoming. We do have, in addition to that, some prizes that we like to give out to our Patreon supporters because we so appreciate what they do. The summer seasonal prize, which you drew, Germ, about a week ago, Paul Mulrooney.
Yes.
Paul Mulrooney? Paul Mahoney, surely that's supposed to be.
That's an M. Oh,
yeah, Paul Mahoney is his name, isn't it?
I don't know. Paul, what's his face? That's how you spell it, isn't it?
Mulroney.
Or is it with an O? I don't know. I know 2 other people with the last name that says it exactly the same way. It's different spelling. I actually know another guy called Paul Maroney as well, and it's different spelling. So,
all right. Well, some guy called Paul who supports us on Patreon now has 9 more cards than he used to have in his Phantom Gallery Series 2 collection, and all of them are signed by some Australian but some international artists as well, which was the Summer Series prize. The summer season prize that he won through Patreon. Another Patreon prize prior to that was the Jim Aparo book, which Jermaine's mentioned this podcast. That's the collection of Jim Aparo's work as produced by Hermes Press, who we know does beautiful work. And that was picked up by Mark Haywood. And both of those guys have received their prizes now and are very happy to have them. So we do like to look after our patrons wherever we can. And it's more than just you giving us money and never seeing anything from it. So thank you very much, guys. We are going to have a special. We've been doing these seasonal draws. We're sort of backlogged with prizes, if you like, which is a good problem to have. And so, to help solve that, at Christmas, in the sort of the week before Christmas, we're going to have another special Patreon draw. And there are 2 prizes for that. One of them is that there were 5 cards signed that were left over that Paul did not choose. So,
and I'm showing them on for the YouTube viewers now. So there's Marcelo Bays, Wendell Cavallanti, it's late, Paul Mason, Shane Foley, Jamie Johnson, and Jason Paula. So there's actually 6 there.
Perfect. Okay, so 6 more cards, and you just heard the artists there who have signed those. And Jermaine, I'll get you to hold this up, or you can be my barrel girl. A copy of Lightning Strikes number 2. This is signed as well. So can you talk and tell us about that one, Jim?
Yeah. So we all know how rare these are. These are rarer than hen's teeth. Rarer than probably Frew number 1.
We've seen the issue, but we've seen the image, but not a lot of people have held the comic.
Yeah. So this is actually signed by Jamie Johnson. So a huge shout out to Jamie, who basically helped us with this donation. And so the first winner gets to choose either between the cards or the comic, and then the second gets the other one, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the only way that you're going to be in the draw for those is if you are a Patreon subscriber on the 15th of December. We've decided that that's the date that we're going to draw it. The podcast, it's the 7th as we record now. It should be out by the 8th or 9th. So that'll give you about a week from the time the podcast drops. If you're interested in entering that competition, then make sure that you are on. And there's no limit. You don't have to be a $5 or a $10 or whatever it is subscriber. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you are in that competition. So
Yes.
Let's get on board with that. And speaking of which, we should say thank you very much to a couple of new subscribers we've picked up since the last Comics and News in Gary Horn and David Ennis. Guys, we really appreciate your support. It helps us do what we do, which we love, and we hope that you get something out of as well. So thank you very much to Gary and David. Right. So all of that, as I said, the Patreon links are at our website, which is www.chroniclechamber.com, which is where you need to go to find out anything that we've been doing. Look forward to you getting on board and reading some stories there, whatever. If you want to get in contact with us, we are probably most reliably at email, which is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. Hit us up there. You can, of course, try and get on touch. And Jermaine's very good, really, at being on top of the social media. So we're on Facebook at chroniclechamber.com. We also administer the Phantom Collector group on Facebook. We're on Twitter at chronicle_tweet and on Instagram at Chronicle Chamber, so you can find us there. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, or if you have an Android phone, we're available via apps like Spotify or Podbean, Player FM, Castbox, Listen Notes. Look, there are some different podcast apps these days. So subscribe to us wherever you're listening to this, I guess.
Definitely.
All right. Well, Jerm, this has been a lot more of an epic podcast than we sort of expected and we planned for when we sat down tonight. But there was just a lot to go through.
Yeah. And, yeah. So are we going to be catching up again before Christmas, or is that it?
No, we'll do a Christmas one, I reckon. I know we've got some summer series in the bank and that sort of thing, but surely in the week or so... Yeah, we'll do some sort of Christmas get together. Hey?
I think this might be it, mate.
Nah, there'll be something, mate. There'll be something. We'll do an introduction to the Christmas special we've been talking about, or something like that.
All right. So can't say Merry Fantomen.
Well, you can. It's December. You can do whatever you like. But we're going to get together again before Christmas, I'm sure.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks
time,
everybody.
Merry Fantomen.
Hey? Yeah, until next time, mate. Merry Phantom.
500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom.
The ghost who walks.
The Phantom.
Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He finds